I'm calling the meeting to order of the Salem Budget Committee for May 4th, 2016. Would the recorder please call the roll?
Mayor Peterson?
Here.
Member Bennett?
Here.
Member Anderson?
Present.
Member Nanke?
Here.
Member McCoy? Absent. Member Dickey? Absent. Member Benjamin? Absent. Member Benars?
Here.
Member Lewis?
Here.
Member Berger?
Here.
Member Kylowite?
Here.
Member Bailey?
Here.
Member Moore Green?
Here.
Member Wildfang?
Here.
Member Gonzalez? Absent. Member Hazlitt?
Here.
Member Bergman?
Here.
Member Milton? Absent.
Member Kylowite, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome everyone. I got a email from Councillor Dickey apologizing for not being able to make it tonight. But thank you everyone who could. We have a busy agenda tonight, so we'll get started and try and keep us moving. Starting with the minutes, I hope everyone got a chance to review those.
Move approval.
We have a motion to approve the minutes from Member Nanke. We have a second from Member Bednars. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes. Next up is handout material. On a lot of these items are discussion of wish list items or things we've asked for before. I'd like to hold off on discussion of these items until the end when we have our overall discussion of goals and policies. But if you have any specific questions about technically what's on your table, feel free to ask those after the budget officer covers them.
Great, thank you. Kelly Jacobs, City's Budget Officer. I actually have quite a bit to cover this evening, as you noted, with handout items, and so I'm just going to really get started, and I'm going to go pretty quickly. Item 4A in your handout materials is a summary of Budget Committee actions through April 27th. This item has been revised from the version that was posted to the internet and emailed to members on Friday, April 29th. On the attachment labeled Attachment 2, which is the wish list, this updated report provides wish list items categorized as either one-time, infrequent, or ongoing. As the Budget Committee can influence only the budget being reviewed, many of the wish list items have been categorized as one-time. Anything that requires the hiring of career staff is categorized as ongoing. Also added to the updated report is the cost of restoring West Salem Branch Library public access hours to 31 per week. An information report will be provided with the May 11th agenda, but as a precursor to that report, I would like to provide a very brief explanation as to why the cost of 15 additional public access hours is almost 2.5 times the current program expense. This estimate for restoration of hours at the West Salem Branch Library also includes the return of services like weekly story times and other programs, reopening of the book drop, and enhancements to the collection. The primary cost driver for increased hours and restoration of services is the cost of staff. The proposal adds career staff and additional part-time hours. Moving on to item 4B. This report provides 3 options for the use of the $20,000 wish list item to address invasive plant control. Item 4C provides additional information regarding the process for developing a park in the Nen-Lansing neighborhoods. At this time, a cost is not included on the wish list for this park development, but the report includes information regarding the $3.43 million in unspecified appropriation in the Extra Capacities Facilities Fund. This is the fund where we accrue system development charges as the source for a potential land acquisition and for park development. Item 4D includes 3 options for addressing the construction of bocce courts in Salem Park, which represents a $58,000 wish list item. Item 4E provides an explanation of how increasing the fiscal year 2016-17 allocation for the sidewalk repair program to $1 million could be accomplished. This information report references a $90,000 wish list item. Item 4F is an information report regarding flashing pedestrian safety crosswalks. Item 4G provides information regarding the status of the Salem Park Improvement Fund, which is a grant program for parks improvements. The report references a $10,000 wish list item, but also includes an option for increasing the fiscal year 2016-17 allocations for SPIF grants by $30,000. Item 4H compares a police officer position and a park ranger position as options to improve park safety. This report references two wish list items, $140,560 for an additional police officer position and $65,000 for a half-time parks ranger position. Now I'd like to move on to the two items requiring action this evening. Item 4I is errata sheet 3 and provides for increased appropriation authority in the Extra Capacity Facilities Fund to accommodate a land sale that may not be completed in the current fiscal year. The funding and expense are being carried over to fiscal year 16-17 through this errata sheet. This will allow us, because we're concerned about the size of this, we get very close, the size of this appropriation is enough that we get very close to the 10% rule, which is the city council cannot increase any budget that the budget committee approves by more than 10%. And so we didn't want to push up against that limit. So instead of waiting until the reappropriations process to do this action, we'd like just simply to incorporate it into the proposed budget. So I would need a motion and vote to include this appropriation in the fiscal year 16-17 budget.
Any questions about that item I? Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. Could you explain that again, please, Kelly, and speak more slowly?
I can
And
do
use
that.
smaller words.
This is a $1.8 million item. It is a land sale that is being funded through the Extra Capacity Facilities Fund, which is where we accrue system development charges. Those funds can be used for the acquisition of parklands. We thought that this land sale would be completed by June 30th, 2016. We're concerned that it will not be. It was not included in the 16-17 budget because we thought it would be completed. Therefore, we need to include that appropriation authority in the 16-17 budget. If we wait and do this until we get to the appropriations process, which is a process that the budget committee is not involved with, that's simply a council process at budget adoption, we could push up against that 10% rule. I don't want to do that. This is a known. We need to increase the appropriation authority now.
Okay, so you said it was a land sale. It sounds to me like
Land purchase.
Okay. 'Cause,
It's the sale on the part of.
Okay, yeah, because it sounded like if it was a land sale, we're getting money, we're not spending money.
We're purchasing the parkland
Okay,
with SDCs.
now I got it. Okay.
Yep. Apologies for the
I hope
misunderstanding.
everybody else has it too now. Thank you.
Of course.
I would move approval of errata sheet 3 with the appropriate recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion by Member Nanki and a second by Member Bednarz. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion passes.
The second item requiring action in this agenda, item 4J, is an errata sheet that addresses the error that was identified last week in the West Salem Branch Library program budget. The correction reduces one program area in the library's budget and increases the West Salem branch. And the reason for this is the West Salem branch does not have staff assigned to it. Staff who are assigned in other areas of the library move to the West Salem branch when they're assigned to serve there. Their positions in the main library are backfilled with seasonal staff. So really the cost of operating the West Salem branch for that 16 hours per week is the cost of the seasonal staffing. And so this correction addresses the $50,000 cost for seasonal staffing. And it has no budget impact because it's simply an offset between one program area and another. So it is considered really a Scrivener's error, but it certainly will aid in comprehension as you have additional discussions about the West Salem Branch Library.
Any questions about this? Member Bednarz?
I can't seem to find the errata sheet number 4.
So the second to last
It
page
is-
in your packet. You start.
It is item 4J, almost the back of your packet, the very last bit of the handout materials in your packet.
It was amongst all the pages that we're supposed to put into the book.
the Salem Public Library.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, okay,
That's right.
okay.
We provide you with the replacement pages as well. So the cost in the current, as the cost is currently displayed for this program area is $27,920. It actually needs to be $77,920. So a reduction to circulation services program area and a commensurate increase to the West Salem Branch Library program area.
I move that we accept errata sheet number 4.
Second.
We have a motion by Member Bednarz and a second by Member Nanki. Any discussion on the motion? Member Nanki?
And so if we don't take our books with us, you would like both of
Yes.
these staff reports to be left in the front of our notebook?
Please do that, and we'll insert the pages for you.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion passes.
And that concludes my presentation of handout items.
Thank you very much.
My rapid presentation of handout items.
Big work.
All right, moving on to the urban development budget. For those who are new in the audience, we have staff testimony on each of our budget, and then we take public testimony, and then there's usually a question and discussion on that budget by the committee. So first up, Kristen Rutherford from Urban Development.
Good evening, Budget Committee members. I'm Kristen Rutherford, and I'm the Director of the Urban Development Department. And this evening, it is my privilege to present to you our proposed fiscal year 2016-2017 budget. But before I do that, I want to express my gratitude to Renee Frazier, who's hiding in the back here. This is my first year through the Salem budget process, and she has made it a very painless process so far. So thank you very much, Renee. Oops. The Urban Development Department represents a staff of 36.5 people and a proposed budget of $63 million that includes 12 city and agency funds. These funds are a small portion of the general fund, the airport fund, the community renewal general funds, parking fund, the economic improvement district, the leasehold fund, city construction, and a variety of urban renewal funds. Tonight, I will give you a brief overview of each of these funds and the projects and programs that are proposed for fiscal year 2016-27. Urban Development's general fund budget consists of staff and materials to support a variety of city and urban renewal agency programs. Most of the $4.7 million in general fund budget is reimbursed by dedicated city and agency funds for staff time spent in support of special revenue programs, such as support provided by our staff to the parking fund or to urban renewal projects. Urban Development's net cost to the city's general fund is approximately $1.37 million, which primarily funds social service programs, parking services, and general economic development activities that are outside of our urban renewal areas. We will continue using the general fund portion of our budget to retain and expand existing businesses in partnership with SETCOR and recruit new companies and jobs to locate in Salem. Staff will also continue marketing the city's site reuse and revitalization program, which is funded by a $400,000 grant from the Environmental Protection Agency. And this grant pays for assessing and planning the mitigation of brownfield sites throughout the city. Urban Development's general fund allocation will also be used to provide continued support to social service programs and to allocate $400,000 to local social service agencies that provide emergency relief to the community. The Airport Fund. This fund accounts for revenues and expenditures associated with the ongoing operation of the Salem Municipal Airport. Primary highlights of the airport budget are to continue the current operation levels, which are required to maintain our Federal Aviation Administration Part 139 certificate, to ensure compliance with FAA grant assurances, to manage the Taxiway Charlie project, and to focus on bringing additional development to the airport to increase our revenues. As discussed last year, operating costs for the revenue continue to outpace yearly revenue. The base revenues for the airport come from over 130 ground and building leases, which make up about 95% of the total yearly operating revenue. In June 2016, staff will bring a proposed lease rate increase before the City Council to bring our lease rates up to the current market rate for airport land. Capital improvements to the airport are primarily funded by grants from state and federal agencies, from ODOT or the FAA. In addition to the $1.9 million operating budget, the proposed construction budget of $3.5 million includes funds that make needed improvements to Taxiway Charlie. The project includes asphalt repair and strengthening, as well as apron lighting. This project was funded 90% with a grant from the FAA, with matching funds provided by the city's general fund. The airport has a number of deferred maintenance projects, and while federal and state grants are often available for these projects, the airport has to have funds available to provide a local match, which is typically about 10% of a project's cost. The airport in the past has been relying on the city's general fund to supply the matching funds, and it's done so for the last couple of capital projects. We are working towards ending the airport's reliance on general fund for project support, and have built up the airport's fund balance over the last 2 years with savings from an eliminated position and revenue from a sale of right-of-way to the city. However, this increase will be eroded over time as costs increase. So to offset those cost increases and move closer to sustainability, we will be focusing on increasing our lease revenues through scheduled lease rate increases and working on attracting new development to provide additional lease revenue. The Community Renewal Fund consists of dedicated revenues received by the city from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. This revenue funds programs that focus on economic development, homelessness prevention, safe and affordable housing, community revitalization, and to support social services. All funds are allocated in accordance with the priorities that are identified in the city's 5-year consolidated plan, as well as the annual action plan recommended by the Community Services and Housing Commission, which is adopted each year by the City Council and then approved by HUD. This year's budget is focused on projects to support business development opportunities, address homelessness or those at risk of becoming homeless, and provide key emergency social services for very low-income citizens. In addition, there's $392,000 from downtown Riverfront loan repayments and from Community Development Block Grant Program income that is dedicated to pay an outstanding debt on the Salem Convention Center under a Section 108 loan. And this loan, the debt on this loan will be retired in 2023. Parking Fund. This fund accounts for the revenue and expenditures associated with the downtown parking district. The primary sources of revenue for this fund are the downtown parking tax and our parking permit fees from the downtown parking structures. The proposed budget for the parking fund maintains the current service level for the operation and maintenance of the downtown parking district and the parking structures. In addition, this budget proposes capital improvements to the structures, downtown police services, and contracted services for downtown cleanliness and installing holiday decorations. Planned capital improvements in the upcoming year include masonry, ceiling, electrical, and lighting work at the Marion Parkade, and deck renovation at the Chemeketa Parkade. Historically, the parking fund has not generated enough revenue from the downtown parking tax and parking permit fees to fund needed capital improvements to the parking structures. In recent years, these capital needs have been funded by a combination of urban renewal and parking revenues. However, significant savings on capital projects over the last 2 years and increased permit revenues now allow the parking fund to create a reserve, setting aside funds for future capital projects. This budget reflects a 2% increase to the downtown parking tax, which is the maximum annual increase that is allowed by Salem Revised Code, Chapter 7. The Economic Improvement District. This district stopped collecting new fees in fiscal year 2013-14. The balance of funds remaining from prior year collections will be zeroed out in the upcoming fiscal year as they're used to pay for part of the cost of the downtown clean team. The remaining costs for keeping the clean team active through June of 2017 are included in the proposed budget for the parking fund. After the remaining Economic Improvement District funds are depleted, future funding to maintain the downtown clean team will need to rely on other sources such as the parking fund, the general fund, or possibly the Leasehold Fund. The Leasehold Fund provides for the operation and maintenance of city-owned lease spaces on the ground floor of the Chemeketa and Liberty Parkades. There are two primary sources of revenue for the fund: tenant lease revenue and common area and utility reimbursements. These funds are used to operate and maintain the leasehold areas and provide funds for tenant and capital improvements as needed. The proposed budget sustains our current levels of service for routine operation and maintenance in this fund. This fund has remained stable for many years, and the tenant lease spaces are currently 97% occupied. So this concludes my presentation on our city funds. I can stop and answer questions now relating to these funds before I move on to the urban renewal funds, or if the chair would prefer, I can move directly on to the urban renewal funds.
Why don't you move on to the urban renewal funds?
The Urban Renewal Agency of the City of Salem currently manages 7 urban renewal areas within the city. These are the Riverfront-Downtown, North Gateway, West Salem, Fairview Industrial Park, Mill Creek Industrial Park, McGill Crest, and South Waterfront urban renewal areas. Revenues that are generated from the increase in property tax collections, or tax increment as it's also called, from each of these areas are managed as separate funds and can only be used to fund projects within the respective urban renewal area. The projects must be identified in the area's urban renewal plan to be eligible for funding. In Salem, urban renewal investments in water, sewer, roads, parks, trail connections, the restoration of natural areas, and public-private partnerships have opened blighted areas to private investment, created jobs, and enhanced the community's economic prosperity. The Urban Renewal Agency will continue to provide a dedicated stream of revenue to invest in several projects in the upcoming year. The Riverfront-Downtown urban renewal area proposed budget includes $600,000 to remove a travel lane and restripe it as a bike lane on Church Street between Trade and Union, and on High Street between Trade and Marion. $4 million is set aside for targeted property acquisitions or redevelopment support as opportunities arise, and $110,000 is included to design and construct alleyway improvements and install art pedestals in the downtown. The proposed budget also includes funding to continue the capital improvement grant and loan programs in this area, as well as funds set aside for streetscape improvements. In December 2015, the West Salem Business District Action Plan was adopted. This plan makes recommendations that prioritize the use of urban renewal funds in the West Salem urban renewal area, including transportation projects and opportunities for supporting redevelopment and building improvements. The proposed budget includes $1.03 million in funds set aside for future allocation to projects or programs that align with the action plan, and will fund the completion of a transportation study in the West Salem Business District to determine the feasibility of an undercrossing at Wallace Road. The budget also includes a reallocation of $481,000 of unspent grant funds. Guidelines for the grant program in this area were updated in July 2014 to help attract more significant development. The Fairview Urban Renewal Plan reached its maximum indebtedness level in fiscal year 2013-14. Tax increment collection in this area has ceased and all existing debt has been retired. However, the fund has a cash balance of $2 million remaining on hand from prior debt issuances that can be allocated to new projects. Staff is working to identify additional projects for the agency's consideration and will bring recommendations forward in the future. Additionally, the proposed budget includes $168,000 of funds that are dedicated to this area's small business loan program. North Gateway. Oops, I'm still on. North Gateway. In November 2014, the agency board allocated $200,000 for the Portland Road Corridor Strategic Action Plan. This action plan prioritizes the use of the remaining funds available in the North Gateway urban renewal area and identifies opportunities to maximize private investment, job creation, and economic vitality. The action plan was adopted by the agency board on March 28, 2016. This proposed budget sets aside $5 million to fund projects recommended in the action plan. The proposed budget in this area also includes $900,000 carried over for the construction of public stormwater improvements in the Cherry Avenue Industrial Center, and a carryover allocation of $327,000 for North Gateway urban renewal loan and grant programs. The South Waterfront urban renewal area was established in 2007 to assist in facilitating redevelopment in and around the former Boise site. Tax increment has not accelerated at the rate anticipated when the urban renewal area was established. In fiscal year 2016-17, the budget recommendation designates funds to be used primarily for staff efforts to continue working with the Pringle Square development team to address Pringle Creek pedestrian connectivity and related issues. The McGillcrest urban renewal area was established in September 2006 with the intent of providing funding for improvements to McGillcrest Street Southeast to stimulate private redevelopment and enable an additional 90 acres of industrial and 30 acres of commercial property to be brought into the city's urban service area. Funds are allocated in the proposed budget to continue to design improvements to McGillcrest Street between 12th and 25th Streets. That concludes my presentation of all of our different funds, and I have a number of staff members here to help answer any specific questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we get to questions, I'd like to take public testimony. During public testimony, individuals have 3 minutes, and if you're representing a group with several people here today, you're given 5 minutes. Please let us know when you come up if you are representing a group with several people here. And I only have one person signed up, and that is Rebecca Courtney.
Good evening. Hi. My name is Rebecca Courtney, and I am representing a few people. Some are here today. One is here today, so I don't know if I qualify for 5 minutes. So I'm here to represent the Artipotty project, and in case you're not familiar, you might have seen these beautiful portable toilets in the downtown core. So a year ago, I and all of you in the downtown core were walking through a lot of human feces. I represent the Reed Opera House. I've been the director there for almost 11 years, and it got really foul really quick, and we all know that we have, gross homelessness happening everywhere. So it's not just in Salem, we just have to address it. So for 8 months, now, successfully, we have come up with a project, we being 5 women that are from, I represent the art and business district, so I'm kind of the arty side of town. And then we have Northwest Human Services, and we also have the First Congregational Church of Christ, which is on Marion Street. So our goal was to have 7 potties, 1 per block from the river to the Capitol. We know that there's huge purgings and sweeps of homeless individuals that come periodically from both Minto Brown Park and from West Salem Park, and they come over the bridge kind of like our own homegrown refugees. And when they come, they're disturbed. A lot of them are psychiatric patients or have been in trouble, whatever. They come in a bad state of mind, and they have to go to the bathroom somewhere, so they've been going to the bathroom near our businesses. So in order to deal with this, I gave up my parking spot several months ago and put the first Artipotty up. And the reason for the art is not frivolous. It's because it gets more community involvement. People care, our porta potties are not an exciting subject, definitely not dinner conversation. And we found a product that could be laminated on the front of it, that is fire retardant, that is graffiti retardant. And for 8 months, we have successfully have 3 that are operating. And we have all, this is done through, individual donations. It goes straight to the Ace Chemical Toilet Company that we have partnered with. So this is all done on community partnerships and paid for and made the most significant difference in all of our worlds. So what we're doing, for instance, I have less crime at the Reed Opera House. We have less theft. People were lying in their own waste, literally getting so that you had to step over bodies. I wasn't willing to do that, and I don't think any of us should be when such a simple solution has been without problems for 8 months. So we have 3, our goal is 7. So we have 3 up and running. The first one on Front Street is getting hit really hard. It needs double the cleaning because it's the closest to into Riverfront Park where people are coming. So we need some help at this point. Our goal again is 7. We have 2 more that are sponsored by some, rehabilitation company. We have a lot of support from the counselors in the area, from attorneys in the area, from artists, a lot of community restaurants, obviously. We're able to have parties in the alleys. We're able to do some fundraisers, but we've been really just surviving and proving ourselves that this concept can work in a city of our size. So what we're asking specifically for today, oh, and by the way, in my alley alone, 15 gallons of human waste a week go out of that one alley. So mine is used, yes, there's 30 at Front Street, and at Marion Street is also 30. So we have a total of 75 gallons of human waste per week that we are not stepping through. So imagine if we had 7, and plus they look cool. We're able to, they're maintained at the Saturday Market. If you've ever used, it's the same company, Ace Chemical. So they're super clean. You can use them for events. They aren't just for our houseless community. They're for all of us, so that we can, not be in the situation. I recently went to San Francisco. Everywhere smells like pee. It's nasty. It's a big national problem. So we have a way that is working. What we're asking for is the city to consider partnering with us. We're very concerned about the Minto Brown Bridge when that goes up, because of the homeless neighbors that just live there, and they will come over and we'll have the same problem again wherever that bridge lands. So we want to kind of think forward on that so that we can kind of deal with the Front Street area first and then kind of continue to go. So our proposal to you, and it's broken down into prices, it's very humble. It's not thousands and thousands of dollars. It costs $500 to purchase a potty. We then cover it with the art wrap, which lasts for years. Like I told you, mine is almost a year old. It's $75 a month for weekly cleaning. The one on Front Street is needing to be cleaned twice because we need more. We need at least 2 on the Front Street.
Rebecca, your time is up. That's
Okay.
what the red light means. Thank you very much for
Okay.
coming, and thank you
Yes.
very much for the handout. That
Yes.
definitely helps. Are there any questions from the committee? I'm seeing a few, starting with Member Kailavite.
Yes,
Thank you for coming down, Rebecca.
thank you.
A year ago, I bumped into you and you were waiting for a TV station to interview you. Can you tell us in just a minute the kind of publicity you've gotten?
Well, we kind of went viral with USA Today. They called it the prettiest potty ever. It went on the Stephen Colbert Show the first week he was up. We've been contacted from as far away as Canada, which is all really nice, but honestly, we're really concerned about home. And before we go, advising other cities, which we already have, we want to still reach our goal, and even before we go, to other neighborhoods. But it went absolutely viral. We did, all of the news station reports, and continue to get quite a following. We just kind of laid low on the fundraising side because it's been very overwhelming and a lot of work, and we really wanted to prove ourselves first before we kind of got out there and said, okay, this is working. We need more. Let's keep going.
All right, Member Bednarz, did you have a question? Oh, Member Lewis.
Thanks for coming down. I have a couple of questions, and
Yeah.
one is you were just cut off, but the cost of maintenance is $75 a month per
Yes.
potty, except for the one on Front Street, which is,
Well, actually, no, both the one on Marion Street, they both had double cleanings, just because of the amount of traffic between the two. Mine is kind of in the middle, and so we don't seem to be getting quite as much use, but still plenty.
so so those busier ones are cleaned twice a month,
Yes,
twice a week?
yes, yeah,
Price is per month, cleaning is per week.
correct.
Okay. My counting a little over $300 a month. How, for maintenance of the 3 existing ones?
Yeah.
How is that paid for now?
How is that being paid for now? By tenants, by, just community people. We have it so that everyone knows where the money's going, go straight to Ace Chemical toilets, so at least you know where your money's going.
And I'm assuming that you see that as a long-term maintenance?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Member McCoy?
So I've done the quick calculations. It's about $26,000 a year if you had all 7 up doing all the work. Is that
That'd be nice.
accurate?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Member Hazlitt?
Yes. Thank you for coming down. My question, and I was looking at the figures here, on your weekly cleaning monthly slash, says $525 per month, and that's for all 7 units. And
Yeah.
then down below that, if you did it twice weekly, it's $1,225.
Yes.
Because I'm trying to figure, I figured out it'd be about $1,050 instead of the 20.
Well, you work on the budget committee, I'm sure you're correct. I think that was probably just off a little bit, and some of these are hypothetical figures. We're working on hard numbers, but I believe if we have 7, certainly not all of them are going to need, twice a week cleaning. But the difference in the photos that I get from, are just shocking. So we're diminishing that shock by making our city more beautiful and usable. And
Member Bailey?
Thank you. Are there any public restrooms downtown now that are available that are not inside a building?
yes, but they close in the evening.
Okay.
And the evening is when people come out and they back against buildings where they can be discreet, and sometimes they're on the doors of restaurants and things. I've seen the footage. It's pretty nasty. So it's all resolvable, and
All right.
thank you very much.
Member Bednarz?
At the city council level, I think we found that there were 7 bathrooms in downtown. I think 4 of those are privately owned or privately run, and 3 of those are city-owned. I think the city has one Marion Square, one at Riverfront, and I can't think where the third one is
Yeah.
at this point. But we tried to address that to make sure that at least there were bathrooms that were open 24/7.
Yes.
And you are correct. The other bathrooms in the parks get locked at night
Yeah.
because they get abused.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you.
Is there any other members of the public who would like to testify on these budgets? Seeing none, I'd like to ask if the committee has any questions for staff, and if staff could come back up. Looks like we've got several, starting with Member Lewis.
I just, I'll take
Thank you.
I just have one quick question. On page 5 of the presentation, it shows the parking fund, but then it coincidentally shows the parking sign, "Park Here." And I know the Downtown Advisory Board has been talking or introduced to the idea of changing those signs out to match international parking signs. So 2 questions. One, the existing parking signs, when were they put in?
I'm going to have to ask that question of some of my staff. I do not know how long those have been up.
Because I know it's in my lifetime. No, they've been changed since then.
Been longer than that.
No, it's in my lifetime here.
Shree Wargren, Downtown Revitalization Manager. They went up before parking came to urban development. The gold and burgundy ones that are there, I think that they went up when 2006, when the 2-hour time limits were first put in on the street. I think at that time, the branding was done and the burgundy and gold went up. It was in place when it came to our department.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I don't see it in here, maybe because it's not here. Is part of your budget for this year replacing those signs? And if so, what's the cost?
So we're looking at replacing signs. We have capacity within this year's budget that we're looking at using. However, as we started looking at this more closely, there are a number of signs that are outside of the parking district and are not eligible for parking district expenditures to swap those out. So I think we were at an estimate, if we're replacing all the lighted fixture, the lighted signs as well, that it was in around the $20,000 to $25,000 for those that are in the parking district, and another $15,000 a ballpark for those that are outside of the district.
And that would include the sign installation, removal of the old signs?
Yeah. And that's to switch them to, when he said the universal standard, the blue and white standard signs that you see in most communities.
All right.
All right, thanks.
Member Anderson?
Thank you. Two questions, Kristen. The first one is on what you've got up there, the McGilchrist Street improvements, which it clearly needs it as someone who drives and rides my bike on that street quite often. I presume that they will have sidewalks and bicycle facilities too?
Yeah, the McGilchrist redesign would include the full urban design.
Okay.
Staff looked at applying for a Tiger grant for that larger project this year. The requirements for Tiger grants require a pretty hefty local match. So the decision was made to push out that application a year so we could do more of our design and work on getting that match through other sources.
And then you said a full urban design.
Well, so
what does that mean?
and that's sidewalks, bike lanes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And then on the parking fund, one of the four little squares you had said downtown police services, and I presume you're contributing somehow to the police department downtown. I mean, you're nothing separate from that, it's just you pass through to the police budget for the downtown police officers?
That's right. And Renee, do you want to explain? Why don't you come down? You can explain that more clearly.
Hi, good evening. Renee Frazier, Urban Development. There are 5 officers on the downtown team right now, and we're currently funding 2 out of the 5.
Okay, so we've proposed in the budget, or it's been proposed for an additional 2, and also then we put on our wish list an additional 1. So will more funds come out of you folks, or will it all come from the police department budget?
It's my understanding they would come from the general fund.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions for staff? Oh, Member Bennett.
I had a couple I wanted to check on. Why is the leasehold fund separate from the parking fund? Why are the two separated?
So the parking fund, as I understand it, was established separately through, and it's in code, and it sets a tax rate upon the businesses. Whereas the leasehold fund is a property ownership and revenue fund through the lease of those properties as opposed to being a tax.
The reason I'm asking is, as you described the use of the parking fund, it included maintenance of the garages. The leasehold fund has to do with leasing space in the garages.
Yes.
You see the...
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there is some crossover.
Okay.
So the parking revenue from the permits that we sell for parking in the garages, that revenue is used for maintenance of the garages. And this year in the leasehold fund, for the first time, we have made a $200,000 set-aside contribution for maintenance of the parking garages, acknowledging, I think, the point that you're trying to make in that those leasehold spaces benefit from the parking garages.
And have you looked at all at turning this whole package of parking and the leaseholds and all of it into some sort of enterprise fund? Are you looking at that?
We have not started looking at that closely yet, but that is something that I'm interested in doing. With the parking fund, I think, again, it would be challenging to commingle that with the leasehold since parking is a tax.
And does the leasehold fund at all pay for police officers, do you recall? Is that the fund that actually passes dollars through?
No, it's not.
Do we take any money out of the leasehold fund for the general fund? Is there any transfer that goes on there?
No, there's not.
Okay, great. The other is on the EID fund, the $36,000, following up on Rebecca's presentation on Arta Potties, how is that money? You've got $36,000, almost $37,000 there. How is that being spent then this year? What's the program look like?
That's being spent on the clean team, the downtown clean team.
Will that cover the whole clean team operation?
It does not. It covers a portion of it. The balance of that is picked up from the parking fund.
Now, that gets picked up by the parking fund. Okay. I'm kind of curious. I guess I'm working on, in my head, and maybe we'll talk about it later, but the nexus among these funds and how this all happens, because I remember when the parking fund had money for promotions. That's what came out. That was a chunk of the parking fund. And I'm trying to remember how all this has changed so dramatically. And then when I listened to Rebecca describe the downtown cleanliness problem, it sounds like the cleanliness becomes actually a hygienic problem, and that we've got a kind of a serious situation that they're trying to resolve. Have we identified funds for the program that they're involved in yet?
No, we have not.
Could we identify funds in here for that program?
We could. You could identify funds from this year from the EID, from the Economic Improvement District, and shift costs for the clean team to the parking fund.
So the parking fund would backfill the clean team?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great, thank you.
All right, Member Nanki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And a couple times you've talked about putting parking money away for maintenance of the parking structures. Is there any urban renewal money going towards parking structure maintenance for this year?
Not for this. Do we have for this year?
Because we talk about that every year as far as the amount of money
last year. And this year, we have very few capital projects this year compared to previous years.
There's $297,000 of urban renewal going to capital projects this year, but that's left over from what was allocated in 14-15. It's not new money.
Okay, so it's carryover monies?
Yes.
And is that still dealing with the elevators and what have you, or?
It's resealing the masonry at Liberty or Marion, a complete lighting upgrade at Marion, and deck renovations at Shemeketa.
Okay. And then a weird one. As I was driving home 2 nights ago, sitting through the 4 light cycles at Mission and 25th, I look at the small wall in between the sidewalk and the airport fence along Mission, and it looks like it's purposely planted with ivy that's now starting to climb up the small trees. Is that ours or is that the state's? And we have people talking about invasives, and we're looking at diverting more money in, but we're actually, as soon as ivy starts going up, it releases spores, which I'm assuming then wash in to the storm drains and deposit themselves all the way along the creek system. So
the question then is the right-of-way at Mission and 25th, the city right-of-way, or is it state right-of-way?
Does it belong to us or the state?
Looking at John doesn't know. We have an answer coming up from the back.
Hey, look who's here. Peter Fernandez, Public Works Director. It's ODOT right-of-way, but we maintain it on their behalf.
Okay.
Kill that ivy.
Yeah.
With ivy.
Well, you're talking on 12th Street is where the ivy is.
No.
The whole median full of it.
No, on the entirety of the fence line of the airport along Mission.
Oh, well, yeah, wherever JP can answer that, but I assume on the north side of the fence it's ODOT, and on the south side of the fence it's airport.
Yeah, I just didn't know if the fence was just to give some extra landscape and it was still part of ours, or whether it was part of the state. So
yeah, there's a right-of-way line there somewhere.
Yep, we know how that works.
All right, Member McCoy.
Downtown parking here. How do you arrive, you said 2 police officers were paid for by the parking area. How do you arrive at 2? What's the rationale to get to 2? 2 out of 5?
Needed 2.
I do not know how that determination was made in the past, or if that was made at a council recommendation, and Cherie may have background on how or Renee, on how we arrived at 2 instead of more.
Many years ago, we used to fund security services. Our staff had security guards rather than parking officers patrolling the parking garages. And when we went away from using security guards and went to parking officers, we funded the police, at a similar level to what we used to fund security at.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
You've got contingencies here. I'm curious, I don't know why I haven't asked this question before, probably somebody said it. When you have, last year we had 279,000 in contingencies. This year it's 250. Is that accumulate, or is it just carry over, or is it new every year? In other words, is it 529 in the contingency fund after this year?
So the contingency that is, which
Well,
fund
you
are
got
you looking at?
15, 16, you had adopted 279,000 in contingencies. This year, you now have another 250 in the budget. So does the 279 stay in a contingency fund and you're adding to it? Or is that just, is it carryover or not? I guess that's my question.
The contingency item that you see in the proposed budget is the total contingency, starting with whatever your beginning fund balance is and your new revenues, your expenditures, and then that contingency is what is in that fund for that year.
So I'll rephrase the question another way then after saying that. So if you don't spend the contingency and it's in your budget, then it goes into the carryover? And then you plug in another contingency, so in effect, you've carried over the contingency for 2 years, you just not put it in a contingency fund. Got it. Going to airport operations, you got a contingency fund this year of $756,000 after last year's $500,000. So, which seems like, are we saving that for something? Is there a goal? Something in this distance here that we're gonna have to spend money on? And
So
what would that be?
that growing contingency is to help us provide match for upcoming capital projects, so that if we have to come up with that 10% match for any grants that we get through the state or the FAA. And by having that contingency, it means that it's less or no money that we would need from the general fund, so that the airport can be self-sustaining as opposed to relying on the general fund to come up with that match.
So do you have something targeted, or you're just being fiscally prudent?
Both, trying to be fiscally prudent and reduce the need that we have for general fund revenue, but also there's a long list of projects that are needed out at the airport for taxiway and runway rehabilitation.
Okay, then one more, and this is in parking, the parking enforcement. Out of curiosity, because I don't know the number, what do we bring in parking ticket, if you want to call it revenue, fines? How much a year do we bring in on that?
So fine revenue actually doesn't show up in the parking fund. It goes to the general fund.
Okay. That seems fair.
People are looking through books right now.
So how much is that number? Do we have that number?
Yep, coming up to the podium right now.
There we go.
What we have currently budgeted.
Excuse me, can you speak up? And anybody who comes up to the podiums, please speak up. Your voices are not carrying to this end of the council chambers.
Thank you. The amount that we have budgeted in the general fund for parking fine revenue, and that can be found on page R3 of your book, is, boy, this is tiny print, $871,870.
Okay.
For fiscal year 16-17.
All right.
I guess just as a point, not that I think it should be paid, but our parking ticket enforcement costs are about double that, if I recall. I'm going to look back there. So at some point, you start wondering, we're paying twice as much to enforce something that's bringing in half the revenue. Big question mark there. How, is that worth it at some point? Something to think about, because to some degree, if we've got 10 people running around doing that and forcing parking.
Tried that.
Anyway.
All right, Member Peterson, do you have a question?
Thank you. Yes, I do have, and actually someone along here, maybe it was Councilor McCoy, just started asking one of my questions, and that has to do with contingency. And I noticed the same thing in the downtown parking fund when we had an adopted contingency this year of $279,570. So I would like to know, have we spent any of that yet?
Have we spent any of the contingency from this year's
Right,
budget?
15, 16?
No, we have not.
Okay. Then you mentioned that we have, switching over to the airport, where we also have, switching over to the leasehold, where again we have contingencies, and now I'm on page 163, contingency of $429,180 in the adopted 15-16 budget. Have we spent any of that?
And no.
And we're budgeting, the proposed budget for the Leasehold Fund for 16-17 is $641,610. So we're increasing the amount for the contingency, which we haven't spent this year. Is there a plan for next year? So beyond just, yes, we want to have it for a match if we apply for a grant and if we get the grant?
So the Leasehold Fund contingency is being built up for a different reason than the Airport Fund contingency. Okay. The Leasehold Fund contingency is being built up so that it can contribute to the maintenance of the parking structures, which it has not done in the past, and so that we can stop using urban renewal to pay for those maintenance costs in our parking garages.
Okay, can you show me in this budget where we're spending money from urban renewal on the parking structures this year?
So would that be in
15-16
in the construction?
Good evening again. In Book 3...
Can you please speak up?
I'll try.
Thank you.
Better?
It's really important.
I'm going to get to the page if you give me just a moment. In Book 3, under Riverfront, on page 24,
okay.
There's about a third of the way down the page, there's a $297,000 item. That's for parking structures.
Okay.
Number 5 on the list there.
Number 5, yes, thank you.
Okay. And how much of that have we spent?
None yet. This is for next year.
Oh, for last year.
I don't know how much we spent last year, but that's certainly an item we could bring back to you.
Yeah, I would like to see what that is. It seems to me like that information should be in here somehow on funds that have been spent.
We could bring you a report on the total amount of urban renewal that's been spent on parking structures if you'd like.
I think that would be really helpful. I guess, and the point I'm trying to get to here is, if we're holding money in contingency so that we can use it as a match towards a grant that we might apply for, that we might get next year or down the road, meanwhile, we have needs that are not being taken care of. I walk through the downtown. It's not what it needs to be. I'm in those parking structures. They're not what they need to be. And I'm out in the parks, and they're not what they need to be. And then I go through this budget, and I see money for contingency, and money for contingency carried over from one year to the next. And I really think it's time for us to start looking at what needs to be done now, and let's get it done, rather than rat-holing money away, thinking that next year we're going to do something with a grant, so on and so forth. I've heard it. This is my 6th year, and I think that some of these contingencies, and some of them are growing funds with even growing carryovers, beginning fund balances, and I'm thinking it's time for us to start really looking at what we need to get done. We certainly have a large capital improvement list, and start plucking away at some of those things that need to be done.
All right. Member Bailey.
Well, thank you. Along that line, and along the line that several people have taken, including Councilor Bennett and Member Bennett, I think there's room in here, and you tell me where it might come from, I think there's room, particularly in the urban development funds, to fund this Arta Potty business. If you think about what that would require to meet that need funded by the city alone, and/or think about the impacts that we've had without those facilities on parking structures, and if nothing else, just plain city-owned facilities around town, I think we can very easily make the case that this is a very small piece of money that could come out of urban development for downtown and waterfront, riverfront, and be totally justified. So I don't know exactly where that comes from, but I can't help but believe this small item isn't going to be way worth it. Because this is not just this is life safety and health and appearance and economics and dignity and everything else. So let's look for that.
Yeah, I think that expenditure could come from either the parking or the leasehold, as this would serve and benefit those interests, or split between those. It would not be eligible for urban renewal funding because of statutory requirements.
Okay.
All right, it looks like we've gone through everyone who hasn't spoken, and there's a few who would like to speak again. I'd ask you to keep it very short since we have a long agenda, and I'm pretty sure we want to talk about some wish list items tonight. But I do want you to have the opportunity to speak, so Member Anderson.
Thank you. I want to follow up on this contingency thing, and it comes to me tonight that probably in every single budget category that has been presented to us and will be presented to us, we've got a big chunk of contingency. So I'm interested in how, it seems to me there are two types of contingencies. The first one is we're planning for something in the future and we need to amass funds to get to that point. The other type is the standard contingency. We don't know what might happen, and an emergency might arise, we might need to do something. And the latter one is one I'd like to see. What has our contingency been on these various funds every year, and how much do we actually spend out of that? So is our contingency fund too great, not just in urban renewal, but with everything else? Because if that's the situation, well, then maybe some of that contingency funds can be used for projects we need now, and I see Kelly standing up.
Yeah. Thank you. Kelly Jacobs again, Budget Officer. The contingency in most city funds, we don't intend to spend it. It is a set aside in case of. For most, it is not a separate pot of money. It's all part of that budget. You see it. There isn't an amount that is set aside and it doesn't accrue year after year. What happens if it's not used, it flows into working capital. And you'll see it appear again as beginning working capital the next year. For many of these funds, contingency is like one of the single largest contributors to the next year's working capital.
And for the general fund, there is only one contingency. So when you're referring to budgets that have been presented, it is really, as Kelly said, it's by fund, not by department.
Okay. Member Bednarz?
Two quick questions. First off, in the URA, back when we were talking about reserves and such, there's a parking structure improvement reserve of $817,000. Is that part of what you were talking about earlier?
And where are you looking?
Oh, page 59 of book 3.
Okay.
It was missed because you mentioned on page 24, I think it was, that you mentioned the other number, but when I went looking, this is what I found, a $817 reserve.
So this is on page 59. This is in the Mill Creek urban renewal area. And which item are you looking at?
Well, I was looking about halfway down the page. It says parking structure improvements, and I don't think Mill Creek has any parking structures, does it?
I think you're in book 2.
Oh, it's great.
Okay.
It is book 2.
Yeah, so those are funds that we're setting aside from the parking fund and from the leasehold fund for future capital needs to the parking structures. There's about $1.8 million of capital needs to the parking structures over the next 5 years. So we're setting those funds aside for future, because we had capital project savings, we're using those to fund future capital projects.
Okay, and the other question I had comes back into book 1. It has to do with the community renewal. page 123, and it had to do with the internal, apparently it's transfers. We've got up to $2.8 million transfer last year. We're proposing only a $217,000 transfer this year, quite a bit of difference. I just wondered if you could talk to me a little bit about what A, internal is, and B, why such a dramatic difference.
And you said page 123?
Yes, 123.
123. And I'm looking, you said,
So beginning working
Is it-
capital, federal grants, loan principal and interest fees, and then internal.
oh, internal.
So what is internal?
So, go ahead.
I can answer that if
Yeah.
that's okay. So on the Section 108 loan, we have two sources of repayment that are pledged for that. Riverfront commercial loan repayments and CDBG program income. We transfer the Riverfront loan repayments to CDBG, and then we pay the debt service. And last year, the Riverfront income was estimated to be $2.8 million because we had balloon payments scheduled on several large loans. We don't have those balloon payments this year.
Hence the reason it's 1/10 of what it was
Exactly.
last year.
Yes.
And this is the loan that in my presentation I mentioned would be retired in 2023.
I'm looking forward to that day. Thanks.
All right. Member Bennett.
Just one more on the parking fund. Page 143, it indicates that contracted services include the clean team at a rate of $87,220. So to determine the cost of the clean team, do you take that $87,000 plus the $36,000, and that tells you what the cost of the clean team is? Is that
Yes, we've got
how
it
that
split
works?
between those two accounts,
Okay,
yes.
great, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Kristen, for your time. And we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is Human Resources. And Mina Hansen.
Good evening, committee. I'm Mina Hansen. I'm the HR director. You'll notice on this cover slide that it says Human Resources Employee Services because I'll be covering a great number of odd one-off funds and programs that are vital to supporting our employees in the organization. Those are a change, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move through the budget. The first program we're going to talk about is the Human Resources Program. It's part of the general fund. It's on page 29 of Book 1 of your budget materials. The proposed budget for this program is $1,239,800. It has 8 full-time employees. The program really comprises of 4 components. We have the administration and compliance, which I think most of you are familiar with. That is your traditional Fair Labor Standards Act, FML, OFLA, all of the alphabet soup that makes up HR. In this last year, we've been working on ensuring that we're in compliance and have been doing a lot of work toward updating policies, including our human resources rules, in order to achieve compliance with the most recent law changes. In addition, we are responsible for negotiating 6 labor contracts. We successfully closed our AFSCME contract this last summer and currently are in contract negotiations with our fire union and our 911 operators union. We hope to successfully complete negotiations of those contracts. I'd like to be optimistic and say before the end of the fiscal year, but within a very short proximity thereafter. We also are responsible in HR for comp and class. Every year, like we did last year, and again this year, we review our market position for many of our unrepresented positions. Our represented or union represented positions are taken care of during the negotiations. We don't include those in the budget. In this year's budget, there are 6 non-represented positions that we have included and given the budget for salary selectives. Those are incorporated into each department's budget so that they're carried forward into next year. Significant changes this last year. We have, as you recall, had quite a discussion about increasing our training program last year. We have done that. We trained 1,158 employees this year in a variety of topics, and those were just the HR trainings. We decreased our recruitment expenses. We moved from an antiquated system to a cloud-based system. That has resulted in us seeing a 40% increase in our applicant pool. We've also decreased the number of print ads. We were not getting the responses from print ads, so we have gone to a more web-based advertising, as well as some real in-person things, making a more of a presence at the local community colleges, at many career fairs. We find these high touch get us better results than the old-fashioned print ads. We have, and even though we've went to the new system and we've stopped printing, that decreased our recruitment expenses. We've also re-engineered some of our business process to make them more efficient so that our customers are getting things more quickly, and part of the automation toward the recruitment software really assisted that. Into next year, we are looking at continuing to expand on our professional development activities. We know as the baby boomers retire out of our workforce, we're going to have a brain drain. So we need to begin that process, and we started that this year, and we're building on it into next year. We're looking at expanding our use of technology by adding just-in-time learning modules. We are in the process of exploring a learning management system that will include some software, some e-learning modules that we can roll out then as part of our ongoing training in compliance issues. We'll be looking at performance management. One of the items that is on my top of my to-do list is to come up with some core competencies that we would like to see all employees that work for the city be able to demonstrate, and then incorporate those into a more streamlined onboarding process. What is the culture of the city, and what does it mean to come on board and be a city employee? Another component of the Human Resources Program is the Self-Insurance Fund. The city is self-insured for both its employee benefits and its property casualty program. The program has 7 staff members divided between risk and benefits. Currently, the proposed budget for the benefits portion of the program is $28,648,930. That includes the cost of all of the health plan coverage. That's not staff specifically. The risk management program budget the risk management program budget is $11,251,840. The self-insurance program acts as an internal insurance agency for the city. What happened? What happened? Sorry about that. You get a preview, I guess. Good thing Kelly knew what we did. All right. Sorry about that. Employee benefits is a component of the self-insurance program. This is what you would traditionally think of employee benefits: health, medical, dental, long-term disability, employee assistance. We have, within this program, we also have loss control and prevention. This is our safety, our OSHA compliance, looking for ways to reduce our injuries and reduce property damage within the city. We have the property casualty insurance program. This is all of our self-insured workers' compensation and liability, as well as insurance purchasing for our fully insured property program. And our workers' compensation program is in this as well. All of those programs, we have reserves with them. They have reserves that are based on actuarial studies that we have done no less than every 3 years, and we manage those in a actuarially sound methodology. Significant changes. One of the things we did this last year, we're always looking for ways to reduce our health plan costs, even if they're small ways. We did some plan design changes this year. We added a high deductible health plan with a HSA, or health savings account overlay. While we didn't have a lot of participants take that, we had a few. We also added an opt-out option, which we also had a few individuals take. Both of these reduced our costs of health plan, and we are happy to announce that this year the increase in health plan from the budget side is only a 1% increase. So we're very excited about that. Anywhere we can save even little bits in the health plan exponentially make big differences. We're in the midst of a deferred compensation provider consolidation program. We have had the same deferred compensation providers for the last several years, well, since somewhere in the mid-'70s. And we needed to take a good solid look at that in order to fulfill our fiduciary responsibilities. And some of the new laws regarding fiduciary responsibility really compelled us to work on that consolidation. And we anticipate that consolidation to be complete before the end of this fiscal year. Insurance claim stabilization. One of the things that we had been seeing over the last 3 years is exponential increases in our both workers' comp and liability claims. In the last 6 months, we've seen that claims trend upward to stabilize and, in fact, slowly start to reduce. And we believe that we will continue to see that. 6 months is too early to say that after 6 months that we will see that sustained, but that is certainly our hope that the targeted interventions that we have taken on will continue that downward trend. And then finally, we are working closely with budget and have been for the last year and a half in making the insurance allocation more transparent. And I think we are getting there. I think we're just about there. And we're very pleased with that effort. Looking forward, we are going to continue our efforts toward benefits cost containment. It is a huge line item. We talk a lot about the cost of PERS, but health plan and associated benefits are just as costly to the city. ACA compliance continues to be something we have to explore. There are always nuances that come up that make us have to look again at how we're managing that program. We are looking at targeted loss prevention, and part of that is adding a new claims management software in the next year so that we can more granularly look at where we're having losses and where we can intercede. As I said, I'm the Human Resources Director, but you'll notice that it says Facilities Services up here. As we have moved forward with some of our efforts toward cost containment in the city, we looked at how we could reorganize and how we could be more efficient at an executive management level. So part of that became a reorganization of departments, and I have assumed responsibility for being the department director over facilities and fleet. So we'll be talking next about facilities and fleet. The facility services proposed budget is $3,897,790 with 27 employees. The facilities program manages 86 separate buildings, including all of our fire stations, some historic homes, and has 4 programs. Building Systems Operations, which is our techs, and that's what we call them. They manage 1,560 HVAC systems. I thought that was an interesting number, as well as 1 mile of old piping underneath this very building we're in. We have 7 employees in our building maintenance and services program. These fellows run around and do all of the dry rot repair and carpet, and people turn in what we call squawks, work orders for things to be fixed, moved, changed, and they're running all the time making sure that our customers are getting their needs met. We then have the asset management group. These folks, they manage capital improvements, they look at our ADA compliance, they're working on all of our large projects. And then I think the unsung heroes of our group work nights. They're working right now. They came on shift about 2 hours ago, and that's our custodial staff. They maintain 49,000 plus square feet per person. That's above the industry average of 40,000 square feet per person. I had one other little note that I thought you might find interesting. We use 1,300 miles of paper products each and every year as a city. That's enough paper to stretch from here to Sioux Falls every single year. Facilities continues to work actively in energy conservation. As an example, this last year, one of the big projects we undertook was replacing the library boiler for $175,000. We applied for and recently received $18,000 in Energy Trust dollars back for that project. Part of our efficiency and significant changes, as I mentioned, is our internal services reorganization. So we're looking again at where we can achieve efficiencies in our clerical administration, our staff support, our cross-functionality, and how can we be better with what we have. And part of that is looking at a just-in-time inventory. We have moved away from keeping a large inventory in stock and are using things like the courier and other organizations to deliver our parts to our jobs as we need them, and pre-inventorying what we're going to need at smaller projects. For the future, we are actively working with Public Works on the shop's master plan. The original master plan was outlaid in 2003. We are currently working with them to update that master plan. In this next year's budget, we have a $26,000 engineering line for deferred maintenance validation. We'll be asking an engineering firm to look at the deferred maintenance list that we have to validate that the items that facilities has placed on deferred maintenance in fact meet the criteria for deferred maintenance, are in the right priority, and have the right dollar values assigned to them. We believe before we move forward with that deferred maintenance list, we really need to validate that it's accurate and appropriately prioritized. We are looking for productivity efficiencies. We will be aligning employees to create greater efficiencies and looking to make sure that the cost of our materials and services continue to be at the level that are sustainable. And then finally, we're looking at additional automation and technology. We currently use something that's called the Computerized Maintenance Management System, or CMMS. We have successfully entered all of our mechanical systems in that and are adding our envelope, electrical, and other infrastructure programs, so that the goal is to have more preventative maintenance and less corrective maintenance. Ideally, you want to achieve a ratio of 70-30 if you can, or strive to of 70% preventative maintenance, 30% corrective maintenance. The more preventative maintenance you can do, the less more expensive corrective maintenance. This last year, we were able to successfully decrease our corrective maintenance by 15% through the addition of our preventative maintenance system. Moving on to fleet services. Fleet Services has a proposed budget of $5,981,420 with a department FTE of 16. You'll see that this represents a small change of 3.2% over last year, and also a reduction in FTE. Part of the reorganization that occurred this last year was that the warehouse had previously been a component of fleet. It is no longer a component of fleet, it is a component of Public Works. Public Works was the largest consumer of the goods in the warehouse, so it made sense to transfer it there. Fleet, as you might imagine, is where all of our mechanics are that service all of the rolling stock in the city. There's approximately 640 pieces of rolling stock and another 1,600 pieces of miscellaneous machinery, everything from leaf blowers and lawn mowers to everything in between. We are also responsible in fleet for disposal of vehicles. We attempt to secure the best trade-in value, stock value, wrecking yard that we can for our old, frequently very tired rolling stock. Fuel is purchased on the spot market. That's also something our fleet people do. We try to get the best rate and pass those costs along. One of the things that fleet is real proud of, and we're working to refine even further, is our fleet replacement schedule, really looking at coming up with a good methodology for when do we replace something, and looking at the cost of maintaining it, the miles on the equipment, and its usable life. Vehicle safety is an item that we have put some focus on as we replace fleet. The fleet has been adding backup cameras and other safety enhancements as we move forward. So that is something we will continue to do. We are always looking for our safest options when we're looking at vehicles. In addition, one of the significant changes we've made this last year is the delivery of rental equipment. So Fleet had been managing all of the rental equipment. We have now reached out to the departments, and they have taken back their own management of rental equipment so that they can get the right item. This is one of those enhancements where it was centralized, but it wasn't always for the best. We needed to make sure our customers knew what they were getting and they were getting the right thing. So this is one of those lean practices that we were very proud of. Looking to the future, fuel efficiency continues to be a focus for Fleet. Where we can, we are looking at it, whether electric vehicles are appropriate and would serve the need where we can. We are looking to continue the training of our fleet mechanics. As you might imagine, cars are not the Studebaker your dad had anymore. They're so full of computers. Our fleet manager tells me the guys need the training to stay up on it. We are looking at alternative fuels such as the new renewable diesel, which is a biodiesel that is an interesting product that we may be able to change to eventually. And then we're also looking at additional automation. We currently have a program called Faster, which we use to manage our fleet, and there is going to be a need to look at whether to continue that product or to replace it with another product moving forward. And the final piece that I have for you tonight is the Equipment Replacement Fund. The Equipment Replacement Fund is Fund 388. It's found on page 277. It is $4,504,140. There are no employees assigned to this. It is solely a holding program for purchasing fleet vehicles. Departments pay into it, fleet orders vehicles, the money goes out. This program changed significantly this year and has an increase fairly substantial of $750,000 in rebudgeted authority from last year for equipment that was ordered, but because of the lag time has not yet been received. Some pieces of equipment that Fleet orders, and a couple examples are crane trucks and vacuum trucks, have a very long lead time from the manufacturer, and so we had anticipated they would be received before the end of this budget year, but are not certain, so we've reappropriated $750,000 of equipment that has been ordered. There's additionally $675,140 addition to this fund placed there by the budget team for permit system replacement and parking meter replacement. This is a holding for the pass-through on that program. The note I have here is that the Utility Equipment Replacement Reserve Fund has been expanded to include set-asides for the new parking meter technology at the Capitol Mall and for upgrades to or replacement of the city's parking software. In this budget, the funding source for the parking meter reserve amount of $175,140 is the general fund, and the Building Safety Fund provides $500,000 for the permitting software. So, with that, I think that's the one more. Funding strategies. That is one of our top priorities for next year, is to look at how we fund fleet equipment replacement. We're going to explore what are the best practices. Is it pay-as-you-go? Is it continuing this reserving methodology? Is there some way to build up funds over the long haul to pay for more expensive pieces of equipment? And we'll also be looking at equipment utilization. We have equipment, some of it belongs to the city that gets little utilization and some gets a lot of utilization. Is there a way to spread that across the enterprise so that we're more efficient? With that, I don't have any other.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask if there's any members of the public who would like to testify on these budgets. I don't have anyone signed up. Seeing none, are there any questions from the committee? I see one. Member Anderson and then Member McCoy.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Mina. I'm looking at page 36 of your proposed budget under Human Resources. There's a line for other professional services, which over the last 2 or 3 years has seen quite an upward trend from 378,000 now to 470,000. What are those services and what's the reason for the upward trend, please?
There's two reasons. Out of this line item comes the expenses that we pay to outside counsel for labor negotiations.
Oh, well, those are good things. Money spent to lawyers.
So we use outside counsel for our strike-prohibited labor negotiations, so that comes out of that. And then the other was a conscious choice we made last budget year. We eliminated a position in HR and rolled the position savings into this line item in order to allow us to hire trainers and vendors to develop the just-in-time training that our staff does not have the knowledge or skill to do.
All right, Member McCoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mina, curious, under medical benefits, medical expenses, there's wellness clinic research, implementation and service, $500,000. So does that mean, I'm assuming then we had a new wellness program developed and implemented during the year?
We did not. That was a line item that was put in 2 budget cycles ago, and it was intended that we would look at a wellness clinic. We did, in fact, look at a turnkey wellness clinic and got some preliminary bids in this past fiscal year. However, the vendors have told us we are short about $350,000 to open a turnkey wellness clinic. I recently were having discussions about studying what other ways we could use this to support the wellness of our employees. One of the things that we know is that a good solid wellness program will help drive down the costs of our health plan. And so that is part of when we said we were looking for innovative ways. What is something we can do short of coming up with the other $350,000 that the vendors tell me I need for a wellness clinic? Could we fund a wellness initiative through this? And we certainly will be developing an initiative in this next year.
So I'm sure with research, what is there some like percentage drop in cost that comes about with a wellness program, whether it's a clinic or in-house or whatever, that you can apply to this to sort of have a feel for, well, if you spend $850 to get $850 back?
The outside consultant that we worked with that gave us some initial figures indicated that we would likely see a return on investment of $850,000 in about 18 months, that we would hit the break-even point for a wellness clinic. And from there, at least what we've seen in other jurisdictions is that they do see a reduction in their costs of health plan over a period of years.
Sure. So, and I'll ask somebody else to make sure I understand this. If the $500,000 was in there a year ago or 2 years ago, wasn't spent, it went to retain your capital, whatever, right? So it was in there, and now we have $500,000. It was in there. So we've accumulated in reserves well over $850,000. No, you spent it.
Yeah.
So again, the expense of $500,000 2 budget years ago was not spent. It was not expended. And so that amount flowed into working capital. It gathered with all the other revenue sources, resources, and we created the next year's budget. We allocated $500,000. We did not spend it. It flowed into ending balance, became part of working capital the next year, and we've appropriated again. And we're trying, as Mina indicated, we're trying to work out how exactly we would, the best way to spend that $500,000. It has been unspent. It is not accumulating anywhere other than in working capital, and it's that single amount of $500,000. It didn't grow.
Well, it wasn't spent. You budgeted, it wasn't spent. I guess it's how you look at this to some degree. You've got an amount accumulating. There's $500,000 wasn't spent. It goes into working capital, right?
That is
correct. You go through the
correct.
budget again, and you have $500,000. It's not spent. It goes into working capital. Unless you're targeting that same $500,000 every year, it seems to me it starts
We are. We're
accruing.
targeting that same $500,000 every year.
Okay,
If we'd
then it's
spent
a
it the first year,
rollover.
it would be gone.
Okay.
All right, Member Bednarz.
So one of my favorite portions of the budgeting process is looking at fleet management. I was also looking earlier at the shops and what we're not putting into the shops, and you know, and it's a critical, but it's backroom kind of stuff. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the equipment. As I see, some of this equipment is 6, 7 years old, and it's being sold, and it's rather expensive. And I know that we've had this conversation. As an example, a 2007 hydro vacuum excavator purchased for $300,000. Now we're going to sell it and buy presumably something else to replace it with. It's expensive. Don't these things last longer than this, on any of this?
I'm going to call John Dunn, our fleet manager, up to talk about replacement, particularly on large equipment like that.
John Dunn, fleet manager. A hydro excavator spends its whole life sucking up rocks and stuff, and it just gets the heck beat out of it all day long. And they don't last for any city. We're not unique in that. But it's a really good alternative to have people out with shovels just digging holes. This thing just blasts in water and sucks everything up out of the ground, and it's a garbage eater all day long.
It's a time saver, but it doesn't
Big
last
time
very
saver.
long, is what you're
Correct.
saying.
It just beats itself up all day long, sucking up rocks, roots, water, everything.
I mean, these are small things. A 2009 mower, riding mower for, $26,400. That doesn't seem too old. 2009, we're talking 7 years old.
Correct, but it's not like our mowers at home. This thing runs constantly all day long throughout parks, running over roots and rocks and things like that.
The other thing, and I think this goes back to mine, has to do with the uninsured motorists. There's a $100,000 line item for uninsured motorists, not only on the page of the fleet replacement, but a couple of pages before that replacement due to uninsured driver, $100,000. What's that about? Sign language, I can tell here.
I wanted to ensure that there wasn't confusion. There wasn't two appropriations of $100,000.
It's a single one.
There's just one. It's detailed differently on two different pages.
So is it our coverage?
Basically, if we have to make repairs, it's a set aside if we have to make repairs as a result of an uninsured motorist.
Another set aside. Okay.
In this particular fund, yes.
Oh, the other question I had, I noticed that both in parking meter and permitting system reserves, there's reserves. We're starting to put in the new parking meter systems. Where am I seeing some of the savings that we're not having to replace those old time clocks that are out there?
So in terms of the repairs, the savings in the repairs, you would see that in the general fund in parking services. And so I don't have the book in front of me. I can't tell you where that page is, but that's where those repairs would have been made from that operating budget.
So this money, in this particular section, which we just got done talking about, $175,000, has not been recommended for the last several years, or was it at a different location?
This was part of the plan when the meter implementation or installation was planned for the Capitol Mall area, that we would begin a set aside for repairing that replacing that very expensive equipment. And so we're trying to put a little bit aside every year, anticipating that we're going to have additional revenues as well. I mean, that's all part of that forecast was we're going to incur additional expense, but we hope for additional revenues too as a result of that implementation. So we're setting some aside in case we have to make a replacement. Just smart business.
Yeah. I understand. It's expensive equipment out there, and it's going to be going someday. We're going to have to replace it again.
That's
Thank
right.
you. Yep.
And we're planning for it.
Looks like Member Lewis.
This will be easy for you because I'm going to ask for your opinion.
Okay.
In all of the departments, automation and technology seems to risen, and there's money in the budget to do upgrades, if I look at it correctly. My question is, are we keeping up with the advancements in technology, or are you you're upgrading, but you are upgrading at step 2 and the society's up to step 5? Are we keeping up with it, maximizing our benefit from our technology?
I certainly can't speak to that as an organization. I can speak to that in my own department.
That's what
I
I'm
believe we are keeping up. I think this change we made this last year with our recruitment software, the upgrade we are planning to our learning management system, LMS, the upgrade we're doing to our claims management system are all upgrades that are appropriate. They are not just incremental steps, and I think they will assist us over the long term.
Maybe if I could, the question is, are we keeping up with the advancements out there, or are we just doing better internally. I want to know if we're keeping up with the private sector. And I will ask the question to the information technology.
At least in my world, we're keeping up with the technology that's available for public sector. The technology that we would use in private sector for these same things is a little different than the technology we use in public sector. For example, in public sector, there's a product called NeoGov that is almost exclusively the public sector recruitment tool. So there's some things that we have in common with private sector, so there are some things that are very different.
All right. Member Peterson.
Thank you, and thank you, Mina, for your report and for the vastness of the things that you have taken under your mantle. We appreciate that so much. I have a question just to clarify. I heard you say that we're going to be assessing projects that are now on the deferred maintenance list. And I also know, I see on page 35, the engineering and architect services, building and equipment condition assessment of $20,000. Is that the same thing?
It is indeed, Mayor.
Oh, okay. And then what about the seismic assessment that we need to have done? I know our city manager, I believe, has planned to have some money aside for that. Where is that in the budget?
That is not part of this budget.
Not yours, okay. Where does that show up?
The
Kelly maybe knows? I'll bet.
We do have $100,000 in the non-departmental budget, which will be reviewed later this evening, that can be used for that purpose.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, I'm done. I think Chuck.
Yes, you did. Member Bennett.
Thank you. Could you explain one more time this 1% and the health benefit?
Sure.
Was that like a premium increase of 1%?
So we're not fully insured, we're self-insured.
Right.
So our actuary projects out what they believe our losses will be, plus what our associated costs and our stop loss is. We had really projected that we would see higher premium increases, but our claims costs were lower than we thought, and our stop loss, while it did increase, didn't increase as much as we thought. So we were able to only increase our ICAP charges for health by 1%.
That really is quite amazing, isn't it?
It is remarkable.
Yeah.
and I think, some of what I said, some of those little things we're doing are helping. And that's why, while I would have liked to have had a different answer to Councilor McCoy on the wellness, I'm not ready to give up, even though they told me they needed $850,000. I think there's a way we can look to further reduce our costs there. And by increasing our employee health, we're going to increase our productivity. We're going to increase our employees' ability to stay in the workplace longer. So,
yeah, I just thought, I hated to see that go by if I understood it without some comment, because along with PERS, healthcare for public sector are the two high cost drivers, and to keep one at 1% just really very good. Thank you.
And I didn't mention it, but we are starting this year our first joint committee with labor and management with our ASME group on looking at how we can keep our plan design costs below when it finally gets implemented, whatever the Cadillac tax may be, and working together on plan design that's mutually beneficial, that gives us a win-win.
Great, thank you very much.
Member Bergman.
Oh, thank you. I have a quick question. This is my first time, so let's see if I can navigate the microphone here. So you had mentioned that let me speak into the microphone. You had mentioned that you oftentimes sell outdated equipment or vehicles when they're past their useful life. Where are the fund inflows reported as a result of those sales? Because I'm struggling to find it. I see a sale of assets account, but it doesn't have anything in it. So where are those inflows being recorded? And which fund?
John, you want to come up and talk to that?
They go back into our equipment replacement fund, and then they're used for, let's say a police car gets sold. It goes back into the equipment replacement fund, and it's earmarked for police. So it doesn't necessarily commingle with other people's stuff. If it's a public works asset that gets sold, it will go into the public works portion of the replacement fund.
Okay.
And they'll spend it down probably the next year. We try really hard to get the most we can for these. You know, sometimes we've got to scrap them because they're just junk. We've sold things to other municipalities that thought they could use them, that, you know, most of them are very small towns. They don't have hardly any money. We sell stuff on govdeals.com. We sell stuff on Craigslist. We try and find just any way we can to get the most money. Sometimes we can get trade-ins, but that's kind of hard. People don't want old city equipment that much. Sure. But yeah, the equipment replacement fund is where it goes, earmarked to the department that used to have it.
Okay, thank you.
For maybe a little more detail, maybe after the meeting you can show Member Bergman specifically where in this gigantic book are funds coming in and the specific amount that you estimate, because clearly those are large items, and even though they're now at a discounted rate, there's got to be money coming in somewhere in this book, and I think that's your question. So if you could show him that after the meeting or send him an email sometime in the next week, we would appreciate it. All right, I don't see any further questions. Thank you very much to staff, and we'll move on to the next budget, information technology. And Krishna, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, councilors, and the Budget Committee members. Krishna Namburi, Information Technology Director. I'm here to present the proposed budget for 2016-17 IT budget. I'm also going to present Document Services Fund. Here with me, I have my leadership team, Susan Blom, GIS and Document Services Manager, Paul Bagdrovich, Systems and Programming Manager, Tiffany Corbett, Business Services Manager, and Chuck Fauser, IT Operations and Network Services Manager.
Can you have them raise their hand?
Oh, so they all are there, and
Thank
Chuck
you.
is not present here today.
Thank you.
All right. So the proposed IT budget is $6,729,200 with a staffing level of 42 FTE. So these are the four divisions that provide IT support. Between these four divisions, we actually provide support and manage to over 200 servers, applications, and databases for the city. We provide help desk and PC support for over 1,200 employees, and we also maintain the network infrastructure for the city operations. GIS services are provided to the internal departments, but we also provide to external agencies. Many local and the state agency depends on our GIS expertise and technology for their data and GIS needs. So to connect all these pieces together, Business Services Division works with the departments to understand the business needs, and they work with the IT department to find the solution, and then they help departments set that strategy for the technology direction. So significant changes. The proposed budget does include 2 limited duration positions. One of them is programmer analyst position, and it is funded by Priors Fund. Priors is the police records management system, and it's 10 years old, and the vendor hasn't been providing support, and it is de-supported right now. And this position will be working to help us with that replacement. And the second position is a business analyst position and funded by Public Works Utility Fund. And right now, currently, we are working on a massive upgrade for the utility billing system. And as the technical staff are upgrading the technical side of the project, we are in a great need to have a business analyst who can work with the department, with the users, to understand the current business process and also avoid any kind of redundancy, how to use the new system, how to streamline those processes, and also to use that new system to fullest potential that we can. And of course, the centralized management of software. So this year, what we have worked on is we worked with the departments and with Microsoft to centralize and consolidate our software purchases. We actually, last month, we signed a contract with Microsoft to centralize software licenses and saving the city over $1 million over the course of 9 years. So that's a really good thing, and kudos to Network Division and Business Division to help negotiate that contract with Microsoft. And our focus has been, over the past few years, is to reduce that upgrade and long-term cost of ownership on all of the systems the city owns. And we have been using our internal staff to do those upgrades. We haven't been relying on consultants, and we have been very successful to do those upgrades internally. But one thing that we did differently this year is we have been using business analysts to work with the departments to understand upgrade needs, replacement needs, and what is the best way to reduce that cost of upgrades and also the ownership cost in long run. So the last one, we also have been deploying applications that help the community, and I'll talk about that in a minute when we talk about the future outlook. So future outlook for the IT department, we are currently working on redesigning our city website to make it more community-centric, with a focus on easy to find and consistent messaging, and also to deliver the content that is relevant to the community. So this is a huge undertaking for the city. We have not hired any consultants. We are doing this internally, and we have collaborated with all the departments, and this touches all the departments in the city. And the project is actually going really well, and we are scheduled to deploy that January of 2017. I know we talked about this last year too, but our vision is to implement some of the smart city concepts for the city, and with a vision to have that single sign-on, My City dashboard. We have been deploying online registration and payment systems to the community. Last year, we deployed utility billing system. And this year, we worked on Parks and Recreation registration and payment system. The program registration piece of it and registrations and payments part of it is scheduled to go live this summer. And Parks registration and payments is scheduled to go live early next year. And again, this is another project. We actually did do the product development in-house. And we have not hired any consultants, and this is all done by our internal staff. And we are in the process of replacing our group-wise email system with Outlook. And that project is scheduled to end, finish this year. And again, traditionally, we used to hire consultants to do these major upgrades in the past, but we haven't done that. We are also doing that project internally. With the Outlook project, and also we have telecommunication system replacement project that's going to come pretty soon. What we are really looking at is that unified communication for the city. And just to kind of conclude, technology is changing, and the technology needs for the departments are growing, and the expectation from the community is increasing on the technology. And technology is not an optional service anymore. It has become a required service. And we are finding it difficult to meet the needs that we have for the city, especially with the existing staff we have. We constantly do resource planning, prioritization, but that's a constant challenge. And but on the positive side of it, I think we are making a difference to the departments and with the community. And just to kind of answer your question, I know you had, how much, are we keeping up with the technology within the city? So when we are, in order to keep up with the technology or in order to implement the technology, there are several pieces that you need. Number one is, of course, you need money to invest. And number two is you need IT resources, and also you need departmental resources too. It is not just IT resources. And number three is business process. We have to look at our existing business process and see with the new systems, if you're really looking at streamlining those processes, what are the changes that we have to make? And we as an IT alone cannot do that. So we collaborate with the departments to do it. So to answer your question, in some cases, yes, we are at the state-of-the-art technology, and some we are not. There is a lot of need for the technology within the city with every department. And as you can see all the presentations, every department is wanting to implement the technology and improve their operational efficiencies. But we are not able to keep up with that. And the staff resources on their side is also an issue. So with that, to conclude, there is a lot of good and exciting work being done by IT, and the credit really goes to the IT division managers and their leadership, teamwork, and of course the staff in those divisions. And I'm actually, I'm extremely happy with the staff that we have for the city within the IT department, and the dedication, passion, and the creativity they bring in order to make IT an efficient organization. And we were able to do a lot of things and saved a lot of money, and the credit really goes to the staff on this.
Thank you, Krishna. I don't see any members of the public, so you probably don't have to go very far.
I do have, I do have Document Services Fund.
Oh.
Is it okay if I just finish that and then I'll take
You concluded such a pinnacle there.
Well,
that,
I concluded IT presentation, I guess. So, sorry.
All right, please continue.
Okay, so Document Services Fund. Document Services is a division of the Information Technology Department. And the division has the total expenditure budget of $1,568,450, and with the department FTE of 6. So the division operates a full-service mail center and a messenger and courier service. They also manage the Civic Copy Center, providing on-site copy services. The team handles large document projects from start to finish, offering design and publishing services. The division also manages the city copier fleet and scanning and archiving services. So significant changes for this division. Scanning and archiving service demand is increasing, and we kind of saw that especially this year. And each year, product orders are evaluated for frequency and demand, and also services are evaluated and adjusted on an ongoing basis for the best return on investment and business value. Each year, we work towards increasing self-service so that there is less reliance on vendors. Currently, we do not have a work order system. We are IT, but we don't have a work order system, software. So we are evaluating the possibility of purchasing a new software to automate that process. Future outlook, of course, maintaining a healthy fund is one of the goals every year. Existing and new technology tools are evaluated and implemented to reduce operational cost and increasing efficiencies. With the future goal of paperless, there is a decrease in demand for printing, but that causes our scanning services need to increase. So with that, I'm ready to take any questions.
All right, before we get to questions, are there any members of the public who wish to testify? Doesn't look like any. Member Bailey.
Thank you very much. I always cringe a little bit when I hear the IT person saying we're not able to meet the growing demand that we have. And I can appreciate that everybody is top-notch, they're working their tails off, they're trying to make it happen. But as you suggest, with the increasing demand and expectation from the public for services and the constant turnover of technologies, this isn't necessarily a budget item for tonight, but I would really be interested to know what is the strategy going forward to sort of ramp up the IT presence over time so that, yeah, we're all going to be busy, but it's not falling further and further behind. And maybe this is more of a question for the council and for the city manager. But what's the strategy going forward here?
All right, Member Lewis.
Thanks, Krishna, for your answer. I think I understand it. We're improving our technology. If you had unlimited funds, you could probably do more, and I noticed this in the private sector, as a practical matter, when you introduce new programs, you have to wait for the learning curve to get over before you move on to the next step. If we can stay ahead of that curve, and I think we're doing the best we can, my request of you is, you're the best person, in my opinion, to take a shoe off, pound it on the desk, and say, no, we need to upgrade. We are not competitive when it comes to cities. Any organization, private or public, if it has good technology, that's a employee draw. And we need things like that. And so I want you to make sure that, irregardless of the budget you bring forward, if you really think that we're falling behind, you got to say something.
Right, I think just to kind of answer that question, when we talk about upgrades, there are mandatory upgrades that we have to make because we have systems and we don't want to be on desupported versions. On that, we are able to keep up with the technology, and we do that because that's our first priority. So we do that. On the second thing, not necessarily every time you have to upgrade your systems and not replace your systems. But the biggest need that I see is when we purchase a system for X amount of dollars, how are we using that system to get the best use out of it? Where we are really lacking right now is that functional expertise with all of those systems to see what is the best way to use that. And that is the reason why we have been advocating for business analysts to work with the departments to understand, because we are technical people, we can implement the technology, and the departments have business needs, but somebody has to look at the system to say, this is the best way to use it. And that, I do think, long run, reduces your cost of ownership. But the third piece of it is a lot of departments don't have systems to automate their process. And as you saw the presentation from Mina, every division is looking at automation and technology. So there is a need there. So they're I kind of divide it into 3 different areas there.
Thank you.
All right, I do have another question. Member McCoy?
Krishna, so I understand what you're saying about needing a business analyst to sort of, what comes first, the business analyst or the system? In other words, how do you know what system to buy if you don't have a business analyst analyzing the needs of the department so you can go shopping?
So in my opinion, business analyst has to come in first to look at what do we purchase. The first question is, can we use the existing system differently to meet the city needs instead of going for a new system? So to me, business analyst comes in first. And we, until last year, we didn't have a business analyst. So Public Works actually got a business analyst position, so it's under IT. We got a business analyst position last year, so or a couple of years ago. So it's making a huge difference for us. So in my opinion, business analyst has to come in first.
Okay. How are we doing, you know, well, Christian and I attended a dinner last night, and a big shot from Google sort of gave the $10,000 foot outlook on, you know, technology and business and those kinds of things, and gets you thinking real quick when you look at how innovative they are and what they've done in 17 years. But one of the things we talked about was mobile-friendly apps, and you know, if you look now, it's over half, I think, of all Google searches are on a phone. They're not on PCs, and it's getting bigger. How are we in the city with what we do provide to the public? How much of it is mobile friendly, and if not, what's the need to get to that point?
So everything that we are actually providing to public is mobile friendly.
Good.
That's one of the way we have designed the system. So everything is mobile friendly. But you know, speaking of that presentation last night, the other piece of it, I know we talked about it as a management team today, is we have to, at some point, we have to go mobile with our inspectors and the field, you know, officers, and there is a return on investment on that as far as the staff efficiency. But also, we as a city have to look at what is a strategy to implement those mobile devices. It's not we are going to go purchase, you know, 50, 60 devices to meet the business needs. We really need to know how are we going to deploy that. And again, right now, we don't have resources to look at that overall big project for the city overall, and how do we go forward with that?
So a follow-up, and I guess what you're saying, I'm going to put it in what I'm hearing in my words. Do we have a long-range strategic plan for IT and how it's interacting, A, with the city staff, and B, with the public? Do we have one in existence, or is that sort of what we need to have or start looking at long-term?
So we do have in our strategic plan, or some of the public-facing applications that we are going to implement. We have that. I'm talking about mobile implementation for city staff. We do not have long-term strategic plan for that, and we need to work on it.
So that needs to be done. Then finally, I know, coming from the private sector, that there was often fierce competition for the services of IT professionals, especially the really good folks. How are we doing at the city with our salaries, benefits, retaining employees, or being able to recruit them if they move on?
It has been a challenge over the past few years, and we cannot compete with the private industry as far as our salaries are concerned. Recently, I think within the past 2 years, we went through a few recruitments, 3 times, failed recruitments, and we can't get people come in. Sometimes people come and work for us, and then there is another company that is paying more. It's IT work is IT work, and so they're usually kind of leaving. But one of the things that I think we have done, the management team has done a really good job, and I take a lot of interest in that, is we really work together as a team, and we work with our employees to get to know their strengths and their weaknesses. And we really know them at an individual level, where they want to professionally grow and the systems that they want to work on. So that kind of helps to create that healthy organization for the city. And I think that has really helped for staff to stay with us. And so I feel really good about the staff that we have, and we have some long-term employees, but recruitment and retention is an issue for us. And as far as compensation, it is not even comparable with the private industry. At any level, it's not comparable.
So how far below are we? 10%, 20%?
In some cases, almost like 30 to 40%. And some cases more than that, depending on the type of work that you're in.
All right, thank you. Oh?
I'm sorry.
Member Peterson.
Thank you very much, Krishna, for this very complete report you've given. I have a couple of questions, and that is that in looking at the budget for IT, and I'm on page 43, what I notice for the difference between 2015-16 and 16-17 are a number of reductions, and I'm wondering how those are going to be managed and what effect those are going to have on your department, and are those reductions that somehow were planned for and anticipated? I'm looking at reduction in funding for communication other. Training is down $9,000. Mileage is not even allowed. I guess you're going to have to walk everywhere you go. I'm not sure why we did that. Under other professional services, a reduction of $62,700. And then I noticed controlled equipment, and I'm not sure what that is, but I see kind of a steady decline in that. In fact, $31,000 less than the previous year. So can you explain to me how those kinds of reductions are going to have an effect on your department and the city?
Yeah, so definitely. So controlled equipment, and that is actually strategically planned that way, because what we have done is we looked at the existing technology and the platforms that we were using for our servers and all that. And we actually, over the years, we implemented software and hardware in a way that we were going to reduce that cost of ownership on that. So those are the cost savings because of the work staff have done on that. And so on the controlled equipment, I don't think there is an impact to the city through that. And as far as other items, to meet the target given to us, and we had to cut down on some of the services. So we actually did take out the professional services. And that's usually when we don't have an internally we do not have a certain skill set. We need to go for professional services outside. And we usually allocate the money, but we haven't been using it. But it's kind of a good thing to have there. In order to meet the target, we had to cut down that. And the training does have an implication because, and that's one piece I think we are asking staff a lot. And the expectation from staff right now is for them to be up to speed and learn new technologies on their own. We provide city time, and every 2 weeks they get certain number of hours to get the training. And we have been using online training, so we have been creative to reduce that cost on that. But what you're really looking at is, I know we were looking at City of Eugene budget today. It's $20 million for IT, and their materials and services is $13 million, and we are at $1 million. So you can see that we do a very good job of trying to kind of maintain all our equipment and all that within that. So I wouldn't say there is any impact from the controlled equipment, but on the training, yes. But we had to do that in order to, kind of reduce our total budget. So
I see. Okay, so your department was given a target to meet as far as the budget for the 16-17 year?
Right, and that's true for all the departments, not just IT. So
sure. Okay. My last question then is, what is it, if there was money, what is it that would be some of the first priorities in our IT department in order for us to maintain a competitive edge in attracting highly skilled, capable employees, and then having the tools and the equipment that they need to do the job?
Right. So there are a couple of things. When we recruit and when we go through our classification studies, I know that we are required to compare with other cities of similar sizes, but we actually do a lot different work than other cities. A lot of cities don't do product development. We do that. There is a lot of in-house development that we have been doing, so that the classification study, I think, has to be done to see to the work that the staff are doing rather than comparing with other cities, just to be competitive, to get good candidates. And the second thing is, I do think having a business analyst to look at the existing systems and make sure we are using those systems instead of replacing it just because we think it doesn't work for us. And I think having a business analyst to look at those systems to see the need for replacement, and right now we really cannot keep up with number of projects that are coming in because we only have one business analyst who can do that.
I see. Okay, so what would it take if we were to have another or a business analyst? What are we looking at dollar-wise?
Cost-wise, I think we are looking at maybe $115,000 to $120,000, including benefits.
Okay, and that includes, you
Includes
said
benefits,
benefits. And then for a classification study, is that something that would be conducted in your department, or is that a human resources? I'm looking for.
So actually, HR did do that last year for us. And again, they did do that last year for us, but and I also, I think Mina can speak on that. I think they have to compare them with other agencies.
Many of our IT employees are also AFSCME union members. So we, when she talks about comparables, so we've had that conversation about the need to look at our comparable agencies and comparable jobs under the Public Employees Collective Bargaining Act. So that's part of that. Coming up in the non-departmental, I'm looking at Kelly, you'll see that I've asked for some funding to do a one-time comp and class study of non-represented positions.
Okay.
We have not kept up over the years, and I like to refer to our comp and class as a whack-a-mole system. It was like whatever we couldn't recruit for, that's what we would fix. And so it's become kind of a skew. So we'll be asking you to consider giving some funding toward a comp and class analysis in the next year.
Good, okay, thank you. I know we've talked about that in the past, and we found, as we were even doing some of our searches this last year, that we really needed to do that across the whole system. Good, okay. Thank you. Thank you both. I'm done.
Member Anderson.
Thank you very much. I want to follow up a bit on Member McCoy's and Member Peterson's questions. You said that we obviously aren't anywhere near the pay ranges for the private sector, but it's been my experience, having worked in both the private and public sector, that some people prefer working in the public sector for a whole lot of reasons. So I'm wondering, how are we in comparing to other public sector jobs that someone else could take in other cities or governmental units in the state of Oregon?
So compared to other public agencies, we are actually pretty competitive. We are pretty good. And you're right, people come to work for public sector because of benefits and other reasons. But unfortunately, IT industry, a lot of especially recent graduates, they really don't think about benefits or long-term retirement. They're looking at, what do I get paid today? And that's the generation, so that's what we are dealing with.
Excuse me, but I'd also add, there are people who come to public service because they value public service.
They do, but again,
they're called to that, I guess I would say.
And the pool is minimal. Like I said, we have been doing actually a really good job to make sure the employees are happy, and so we are actually doing well right now. But we go through that recruitment issues.
All right, Member Lewis.
Just a real quick follow-up. You mentioned that the difference between public and private is 20-30% even. Is that salaries only and not benefits?
Yeah, it's just the salaries, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Krishna.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate it. I realize that it looks like the committee desperately wants a break, but I'm going to ask for to get through one more department before we do a break. I guess we can say standing over there. Next department is Legal Department. Dan Atkins. I don't know why I can't say it, Dan.
City Attorney Dan Atchison. Good evening, everyone. I've been told I have 15 seconds, so I'll try to keep this brief. I do need to figure out how to start my presentation.
We just had IT up if you need it.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. All righty. So the department's budget is $2.13 million with 15 FTE. I also wanted to recognize Ruth Ann Stelmacher as our office supervisor. She's also our budget analyst, our in-house IT director, just about chief cook and bottle washer as well. So thank you, Ruthie, for putting all this together for us. So as far as the areas of the legal department, we have 4 basic service areas. There's legal advice and representation, public records, which is through the city recorder's office. So the city recorder is a division of the city attorney's office for the legal department. The city recorder also serves as the city's elections official and the clerk to the council. We also do misdemeanor prosecution in the municipal court as well as civil litigation in-house. We're one of the few full-service in-house city attorney's office in the state. As far as significant changes over the past year, we've also have been embracing technology. As you may have remembered from last year, we've implemented Justware, which is a document management system that we've utilizing for our municipal court cases, our litigation cases, as well as our general counsel. Once we get it fully up and running, and it's been fully implemented now, but we're just getting into it, it'll be more of a paperless office and able to save a lot of money on copy costs and storage costs and whatnot. We're also in the midst of rolling out Granicus Legistar, which is a agenda software program that's going to be, to borrow a term from IT, an enterprise solution to allow the entire city to prepare council agendas, board and commission agendas, the budget committee agenda, electronically without passing paper back and forth. It's going to be a much more efficient system. We're going to be able to get the agendas out sooner to the public and to the council and the board members. It's also going to save us a lot of time and be a lot more efficient. Our city recorder spends a humongous amount of time the week before every council meeting putting that together. She has a lot better things to do, and she's a very intelligent, gifted employee. We'd like to use her for more important things than collating documents. We're also rolling out Municode, which is going to be an online recodification of the Salem Revised Code. It's going to allow folks a lot more easy access and easy searching ability of the code. It's going to update the code more frequently. Right now, when an ordinance is adopted that amends the code, it takes several months for that code to actually get into your book. The online change is fairly quick, but this will allow things to happen a lot more quickly and allow folks in the public a lot more ability and efficiency as far as accessing the code provisions. Significant changes also for the last year or so. The municipal court has changed their procedures and changed their scheduling. It's resulted in increased time for the city attorneys to do prosecution as far as being in court and spending time on prosecution matters. As well as with the uptick with the development in the community, we've seen a lot more appellate work on the LUBA level and a lot more involvement on development matters. Future outlook, we're continuing to modernize our records management. Recently, you helped us adopt a policy the council helped us adopt a policy to digitize our permanent records and to keep those in a digital format. We're moving forward on that. We're committed to providing a timely response to clients, the client departments, the council, and the boards and commissions. Sort of a chronic refrain from the departments has been that it's stuck in legal. We're waiting for legal to review it. Our goal is to reduce those complaints and get a timely, accurate, professional response back to clients more quickly. Prosecution resources, as I mentioned, we're spending increasing amount of time with our prosecutors and our staff responding to municipal court issues. We expect that to continue in the future, as well as the development challenges. Not only is it a matter of more cases at LUBA, but as development happens, those issues can get complex and oftentimes require assistance from the city attorney's office to resolve code interpretations and whatnot. And that is my presentation.
Just slightly over 15 seconds.
Sorry.
Nice work. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this budget? Seeing none, are there any questions? There are. Member Bailey.
Just a quick one, and not of any major consequence, I hope. Do you also provide counsel to the Planning Commission on land use law, since that's such a
We sure
universe
do.
unto itself?
Deputy City Attorney Natasha Zimmerman is the general counsel for the Community Development Department, including the Planning Commission.
Good.
And land use is what I deal with in my professional world more than anything. The training for the Planning Commission as well as City Council on land use issues, is that done by city staff, or do you bring in outside people to do that?
The City Attorney's Office and the Planning Division does that in-house.
Okay. Any other questions? Looks like everyone wants to get to break. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to have a break. We're got 5 minutes. 5 minutes is up. Please make your way back to your seat.
I agree.
Next up is a review of city manager and council budget. Mayor and council, sorry. And we have Mr. Duncan.
Good evening, Chair Berger, Mayor Peterson, members of the City of Salem Budget Committee. I'm Deputy City Manager Casey Duncan, and I have the pleasure of introducing 3 budgets before you this evening. First, beginning with the mayor and council budgets. Also cover briefly the Public Art Fund as well as the non-departmental fund within the general fund. Salem's mayor and 8 city councilors are volunteer representatives elected by Salem residents. The council is the equivalent of the municipal corporation's board of directors, developing legislative policies and operational goals, which are implemented and carried out by the city manager and his staff. The mayor and council receive primary support from the city manager's office. The total budget of the mayor and council is nearly $226,000, with more than 70% of the budget allocated to professional services such as an independent audit of the city's finances, review of cases brought before the hearings officer, and representation of the city's interests to the state legislature and other governmental agencies. In 2015, the City Council led a nationwide search that concluded with the hiring of City Manager Steve Powers at the end of November. The council continues to work toward the goal of a new public safety facility. The council has identified a preferred site and is evaluating options regarding size and programming. A work session is scheduled on June 1st to continue discussions regarding the next steps toward a potential bond measure on the November 2016 ballot. As part of the focus to build and maintain regional relationships, the council authorized participation in the Mid-Willamette Homeless Initiative Task Force. This multi-agency partnership is working to identify and implement strategies to reduce homelessness in Salem and surrounding areas. Construction of the Peter Courtney Minto Brown Island Bridge has been underway since April 2015, and the long-standing community goal of connecting 3 major urban parks and a network of more than 20 miles of trails should become a reality in 2016. Next fiscal year, the council will continue to examine the impacts of legislative bills on city operations and defend the city's local home rule authority. In keeping with its purpose, the council will establish policy direction and goals to guide city staff and the city's boards, commissions, and committees. The council will continue to consider major projects and infrastructure needs, balancing the needs with available resources. And funding is proposed within this budget to begin a 1 to 2 year effort to evaluate and plan for the city's future. Elements that may be included in this plan: smart business approach, or a comprehensive strategic plan for the city, a communication survey to garner resident feedback, performance analyses of city service delivery, and update to council goals. Would you like to take public testimony and questions, or continue on, Chair Berger?
Continue on, we'll do it
Okay.
all at once.
Now, the Public Art Fund. In July 2010, the Salem City Council formed the Salem Public Art Commission and the Public Art Fund through Salem Revised Code Chapter 15. The commission is charged with the selection, acquisition, commissioning, and deaccessioning of public art, including murals. The Public Art Fund is a source of funding to support the work of the Public Art Commission. The Salem Public Art Commission is comprised of members with expertise in art curation, and art management. The commission is supported by Courtney Knox, who is here this evening. She does an outstanding job in representing this role, and she is present to answer specific questions related to the Public Art Commission. The fund itself is in good position. There's much work that needs to be done to care for the public art collection. The majority of the collection was acquired in 1972 and 1974 as part of the Civic Center's opening and the Mayor's Arts Invitational shows. While the fund was set up to receive dedicated funding equal to 0.5% of the total eligible costs of public improvement projects, the Public Art Fund's proposed budget relies on funds from other resources. In fiscal year 2015-16, the fund was allocated $30,000 from the Transient Occupancy Tax Fund to support future acquisition, management, and maintenance of the arts collection. Per Chapter 15, 70% of the funds are to be used for acquiring public art, 20% for the purpose of managing the art collection, and 10% to support maintenance, conservation, and the deaccessioning of materials in the collection. For the proposed budget, another $30,000 of TOT resources are included for allocation to the Public Art Fund. A comprehensive digital online inventory of the art within the Salem Public Art Collection was completed, and photos of the collection are now viewable online. There are approximately 85 confirmed pieces, with a few more to be added. The online collection was developed in collaboration with the Salem Public Library Foundation, which also displays public art in view at the Salem Public Library. Most recently, the Public Art Commission approved design for artwork by the Confederated Tribes to coincide with the Peter Courtney Minto Island Bridge. There are 11 approved locations for art pedestals in the downtown core since last fiscal year. The Urban Renewal Agency has proposed annual funding for 2 art pedestals. The Salem Public Art Commission, in collaboration with the Oregon Artists Series Foundation, is working to identify and acquire pieces for the pedestal locations. One piece, the cube, has been installed, and installation of another piece is expected later this summer. As part of its goal of placing public art in the public view, the Commission developed, in collaboration with staff, a map of available spaces for public art. As mentioned, from the Cultural and Tourism Fund helps to leverage the purchase of additional artwork and the maintenance of public art. There are funds in this budget to acquire new art for the collection. The Public Art Commission will be tasked with selecting those pieces and determining where they will be displayed. In the coming year, an RFP will be issued for services to apprise pieces in the collection for insurance purposes and perform a conditions assessment of the art within the collection. This will assist in prioritizing art items for repair. The Commission's current work plan presently includes developing a roster of muralists, collaborating with the Assistance League on a mural for the Encore Furniture location on South Commercial, engaging with businesses and Downtown Advisory Board on activating the alleys in the downtown, and reviewing the approval processes for the Utility Cabinet Art Wrap program, which was added last year. And the Commission will review feedback on its proposed strategic plan and revise this work to guide the activities for the next 3 to 5 years. Continuing on with non-departmental, these are the non-departmental expenses, those that are not easily allocated to any specific department. Ongoing expenses within this annual allocation include the Cable Regulatory Commission charges for public access channels, membership dues for the Council of Governments and League of Cities, support for mail and messenger services, and debt service for the loan to install new parking meter technology in the Capitol Mall area. The non-departmental budget is the place where the general fund contingencies are located. The proposed non-departmental budget also includes funding for contracted services to help with facility planning, citizen surveying, a citywide compensation and classification study, and strategic planning. These proposed investments have been mentioned by myself and others earlier this evening and previous budget messages, and are efforts that should be taken regardless of our financial circumstances. At $6.2 million, the proposed expenditure budget is 53% lower than the prior year adopted budget, and there are 3 factors that contribute to this significant decrease. The first represents a change in the practice related to short-term borrowings for the Urban Renewal Agency. For a number of years, the general fund has served as a loaning entity for de jure loans, which are essentially a one-day loan that allows borrowing in the urban renewal areas to access tax increment revenues for eligible capital projects. While this practice kept borrowing costs low for the Urban Renewal Agency, it artificially inflated general fund expenditures for loans and revenues for the repayment. As an example, budgeted loans in fiscal year 2016 were $5.07 million and $6.3 million in fiscal year 2015. The Finance and Procurement Division is working with an external lender to keep borrowing costs low for the Urban Renewal Agency and remove the general fund from the lending role. The second cause of the year-to-year difference is the absence of an expenditure allocation for capital mall parking meter replacement. It was budgeted at $1.5 million in fiscal year 2016. If the costs are carried over into 2017, it will be done as part of the reappropriations process. And finally, the expense for general fund liability insurance was previously included in the non-departmental budget. The anticipated cost to the general fund for the upcoming fiscal year of $1.22 million was directly allocated to departments based on a number of factors that influenced the cost. And that concludes my presentations.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to testify? I don't see any. I don't think they're here. Are there any questions for the Assistant City Manager? Member Anderson.
Thank you very much. We seem to have been moving in and out of the issue of contingencies pretty much all evening. So as I read this, as I understand from the city manager, this is the non-departmental fund is where all the contingencies end up.
For the general fund.
For the general fund, yes,
That's
I
correct.
understand that, right. And so half of the budget is contingency? I mean, $6 million, and you've got $3 million contingency?
In the non-departmental?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions? Don't see any. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was very efficient. All right, moving on to goal setting and policy discussion. I want to congratulate the Budget Committee. You've successfully gotten through this entire book. Nice work. I also want to thank all the staff who's come and talked to us and stayed up late and worked very hard on your presentations. We really do appreciate the time you spent on this and all those subsequent reports you've done. You've done a really great job, and I appreciate the questions that I've had personally on the side that you've been able to answer for me. We're now to the point where there's no more presentations from staff scheduled. We have the rest of this meeting and then next meeting, or no more budget scheduled, to discuss what we as a committee want to do. Note that items on the wish list 1 through 7, we've gotten information from staff on those in our packet today. So if there's any additional information we need to ask now. Also, wish list items 8 through 10, I believe those have some additional information staff plans to provide to us at the next meeting. So for the rest of the meeting today, I'd like to start with kind of a slate of how I think it would make sense to get through the rest of the day. I want to start with if there's any additional wish list items that you have that you would like to add based on your work at any point, but definitely from what you've heard today. And then once we get through those items, I'd really like to be able to go through as much of the wish list, specifically items 1 through 7, and go through them one by one and see if there's any of those we want to remove or modify or ask staff for further information on, so that we can be prepared for next week and hopefully have as few items to discuss next week and be prepared to discuss those items, and so we can get through our job without hopefully having to create a new meeting and spend a lot of time. So with that, first question is, any discussion on items today or additional wish list items?
Yeah, I have one.
Starting with Member Peterson.
Thank you. Well, I certainly was impressed with the report that came regarding IT. I have been always impressed with our IT department and how innovative they have been, and in fact, how much they've been able to save the city money, which is always a good thing for us to hear about and to know about, as long as they're not constrained in helping us move forward and keep current. So I particularly would like to add to the wish list the item, and now I'm looking on my pages, the business analyst position in the IT department, which was estimated at $120,000. That would be an ongoing position, if I understood correctly. And then to further support the additional item of the classification study, unless that's already in the budget.
Yes, Mayor Peterson, it is there is $100,000 budgeted in the non-departmental budget for a class and comp study.
Okay, so that when you say non-departmental, that means it's across the entire system.
That's correct.
And that would include in IT.
It is a full system, full citywide comp and class study.
Okay, great. All right, then I don't need to add that one. Okay, thank you.
So I believe you made a motion to add to the wish list?
I did. I would like to move that we add a business analyst position to the IT department at $120,000 on an annual.
All right, we have a motion by Member Peterson and a second by Member McCoy. Would you like to address the motion?
Oh, I think I already did. I'm okay. Yeah.
Any discussion on the motion? I guess I want to discuss it. I've generally, in deference to the members, voted to support wish list items throughout this process. I will not be supporting this one, only because as I look at this list, I'm not seeing that I'm going to spend this money, and I don't want to add something that I will probably vote for something else in favor of in the next meeting. So I think this is probably just as valuable or more valuable than other things on the wish list item. But I think there's a few that raise higher to the top. And we do have limited funds, so I will not be supporting the motion. I don't see any further discussion. So all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? No?
No.
Can we have a show of hands of the noes? Like we have 4. Can we have
I think they need to say their names because I don't think we've got 4. I think there's more than that.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Can you raise your hands high?
Oh, sorry.
1, 2, 3. Yeah, I thought there were 5.
6.
The motion fails. Require a majority of 10.
All right, so the motion fails. All right, any other new wish list items to discuss? Member Bednarz?
So item number 7 on attachment 3 that came to us talked about, Member Bailey had talked about having information about installing flashing signal crosswalks. And I don't see it actually on the wish list over here. Was it an information? We never did make it actually onto the wish list.
Right, I believe it was just an information item.
Okay.
All right.
I have a question.
Yes, of course.
Could someone please clarify for me the vote on my motion? I think Kelly said there needs to be
10 ayes.
10?
Each motion requires a majority of 10 for it to pass.
Is that if all 18 members are present?
That is regardless of the number of members present. We have to have a vote of 10.
Why is that?
It's in the committee's procedures that we require
I
a
think
vote
our
of
attorney is
10.
coming forward. I don't understand why that is when we don't even have the entire budget committee present. So I think that
It
probably
is a
hasn't come up
council
in the
rule.
past. I'd like some clarification on that.
Chair, members of the board, it is a rule of the budget committee. It's in your rules.
I can't hear you.
I apologize. It is a rule for the budget committee. It's in your rules that you previously adopted. I wouldn't want to speculate on the purpose of it.
And the rule clearly is that there have to be 10 yes votes on every motion in order for the motion to pass on the wish list. Is that what you're telling me?
On every motion, period.
On every motion, period. All right.
So if we have a bare quorum of 10, then...
Yeah, then you need
everyone-
you need a unanimous vote to pass things, and we've been there before, and it gets really tough. I actually had to vote contrary to my deeply held beliefs one time for that very reason, or we would have had no budget at all.
All right, thanks.
Member Anderson.
Thank you. I'm going to move to add to the wish list a figure of $15,000 to support the Art of Potties program.
Second.
I would like to speak to it.
We have a motion from Member Anderson and a second from Member Bennett. Please speak to your motion.
Well, I thought the presentation tonight was pretty powerful about what can happen downtown and what is happening downtown. And I know, speaking as a member of the council as opposed to a member of this budget committee, we spent a lot of time and effort as a council to see what we can do to make downtown an attractive, a viable place. And you know, this is a major problem, and it's only going to get worse, I think, in the near future. And I really believe that this sort of expenditure is going to result in the long term in some cost efficiency measures. We're not going to have to spend as much on policing this, on the clean team, on all sorts of other expenditures that we make downtown that could be used some better way. Now, having settled that, I do have a question. I see both Chief Moore and Deputy Chief Miller are here. Is there a crime problem in the porta potties that are there now that you are aware of? Something we should be concerned about?
Welcome, Chief.
Thank you. Jerry Moore, Chief of Police. There has been some crime associated with the portable potties. I think there was a prostitution arrest made out of one of them recently, and I think anytime you have those, there's going to be reports of drug activity or things like that. But
basically, they would probably be the same type of crimes you might find in downtown anyway. It's just that they're there as opposed to the alleyways or someplace else.
yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. It could be in the Marion Square Park restroom. It could be anywhere.
All right, Member Nanki.
Thank you. And you know, we haven't talked about revenue sources or what have you, but during break I asked Deputy City Manager whether or not tot funding could be used to support that as well, because they are art, and you could make a flyer. As far as we have people across the country that are interested in it, you just stick out one of those little flyer things. Hey, look at our art potties. So just as far as looking at that for potential for funding source as well, rather than using downtown funds.
Member Bednarz.
So, a couple things. You came up with, Member Anderson, you came up with a number of 15,000. Is that because of the total here? It said 14,700.
Well, it was a little bit of everything. They asked for $3,000, but that to me is just $3,000 isn't going to go anywhere. And you add both. Yeah, I just came up because of 14,700. That seems like that's what the cleaning is, and there are other expenses associated with it. So that just seemed like a good figure to use.
Actually, when I think we talked about about this earlier tonight. It's the 14,700, the 2,100, and the 3,500 all added together, so it's a little over 20,000 for that.
Right, but we had to come to some reasonable position in the middle. I think they deserve more than 3,000, but, you know, we can't get, I don't think we, if you want to amend it to give more, that's fine with me,
actually,
but I can't.
my conversation comes from the point of buy-in. These wonderful ladies have gotten into this program. They have a certain amount of, they're just having problems finding the finances, but they've bought into the program and they want to see that art continue. That's part of their mission as well. So I was actually thinking of doing less, like 10,000, and let them come up with the balance.
Sure.
How would that be administered? I'll go the other direction. How would it be administered if the city came up and said, we're going to throw 10 or 15 or whatever number it is that we come up at? I'm not sure which staff I should ask.
We'd have a contract for services with the nonprofit organization.
Or ACE, one or the other?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Member Lewis?
I'm going to propose a substitute motion, if that's all right. And I move that we fund the porta potties in the amount of $4,000, which would purchase 2. It would wrap them, and it would pay for a year's worth of maintenance. That's my motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Please speak to your motion.
Yeah, this is one of those examples where I'm excited about the opportunity to partner with the private sector. They are, according to what I heard tonight, they already have 3 of these things functioning already with the money to pay the maintenance from the private sector. So as a partner, I think it makes a lot of sense for the city to purchase 2 of these this year, including the maintenance for the year. Hopefully that'll spur additional investment by the private folks. If it doesn't and we get to 5, then it's better than 3, and we could look at doing it again next year. But $4,000 is more palatable to me than $15,000 or $20,000.
All right, do we have any discussion specifically about the substitute motion? All right, I'd like to call for a vote on the substitute motion, and this vote is to substitute Member Anderson's motion with Member Lewis's motion, and then we will, if it passes or if it fails, we'll still have to vote on the overall motion.
If it passes, we don't
If
have
it
to.
passes, then
That does it.
replaces the motion that it's to substitute.
But we still have to, no, you
That would
don't?
only be if we were amending a motion.
Oh.
He's substituting a different motion instead.
So if that passes, it's on the wish list? Okay, got it. So I guess any,
I would like to speak to
Member
that.
Peterson, thank you for the clarification.
Thanks. I do want to speak to the motion. I will support the motion. And quite frankly, I was really chagrined last year when we were not able to get any city funding to have toilets outside open at night, even though that was the only thing that homeless people asked me for. They didn't ask me for shelter, they didn't ask me for food, they didn't ask me for jobs, they didn't ask me for anything else when I was visiting in the shelters overnight last winter, winter before last. And we said, no, we can't do that for you. I was chagrined. And then along came these lovely ladies with this great idea, and frankly, I don't think we've done them justice yet. And I'll vote for 4,000. I would vote for 20,000. There is money there. There is money for dignity and for cleanliness and for the, I think, the added security and safety for people who happen to be downtown at night for whatever reason. And so I will support this motion, or I would go back and support Councilor Anderson's motion if this one fails, and then his motion prevails, or however we do this. Thanks.
And Member Lewis, just for my clarification, this is a one-time allocation, not a annual allocation in your mind?
This is.
I know we're voting
an
on this
allocation
year's
for
budget.
This year's 16-17 budget.
Okay. Member Bednarz?
So first thing was, remember, we already have 7 toilets downtown, porta potties, in addition to the bathrooms that are in the parks, the 2 parks in the main part of downtown. This will add 2 more if it passes. And I don't want my downtown to look like a giant bathroom. I do want to make sure that they're strategically placed throughout downtown, whether you put 2 of them side by side, if they're that being heavily used. But it gets to a point where, we've got a toilet at every street corner. It's a fair amount. I like the idea. I think it's a good start, and I think we can come back to it. This is a drop in the bucket in a $120 million budget. So I'd like to see how it goes first, and it's a good support. And city already has purchased toilets, so we can say that we are working on this issue. We'll just have 2 more. So,
Member Hazlitt?
Yes, I have to agree with the mayor, because one thing, when you say $4,000, are you taking into consideration the cleaning per year?
Yes.
On each one of those?
To both of them.
Member Kylovite?
Couple thoughts. Member Bednarz, I don't think that's correct. I believe there's only 2 right now, but they would love to have 7 total. There's not 7 yet.
Yeah.
That was my understanding.
So the locations are Reed Opera House, that's privately owned by the Reed Opera House. There's one also privately owned at not at McMahon's, it's the other furniture store. We have the city has one in Riverfront Park. We have one in Marion Square Park. Then the Union Gospel has one next to the bridge, between Union Gospel and the bridge, and then the First Congregational Church has one. So that's 6 that I counted right off. I know there's a 7th one out there someplace.
But they're not.
Not all of them are privately or publicly owned, and not all of them all have art on them.
My understanding was Rebecca said they have 2, but they would love to have 7.
Yeah, they have 2.
So you're saying we have 7 already?
No, those are public toilets you're talking about, right?
No, I'm saying like the one at Riverfront and the one at Marion Square are publicly owned, but the one at Reed Opera, the one at Union Gospel, the one at First Congregational, those are all privately funded.
The city's bathrooms,
Right.
not the auto potties.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, but those are the ones she said that close at night. So really, there's
No. These are all porta potties that are stayed 24/7.
All right, any more discussion? All right, I think I'll call for a vote on the motion to add $4,000 on the wish list for the Arta Paharis. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no? No. Please raise your hand high on the noes. We have 3 noes.
I have a question. So then if this motion fails, then we go back to...
It passed.
It did pass, okay.
Thanks. Okay.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
So the motion passes. Any other discussion of new wish list items or other discussion of things on today's agenda? Yes, Member Bailey.
This isn't a new item, but I just want to say that I appreciate having collected all of these items on the wish list that we have over the last few weeks. I think there's a number of really good additions. But I am swayed by what we heard about the fire department and its fiscal needs. And I'm not sure that no matter how well-meaning and how deserving many of these smaller items are, that we're going to be able to do it. So I'm really rethinking a lot of what I personally have put on the list and thinking about where we need to go to meet some real basic needs in the city.
All right, I think that's a good transition into discussion of the wish list items that we already have. And so we'll start with Member Moore Green.
Thank you, Chair Berger. And this goes back to last year, okay? So go down memory path with me here. There was testimony last year from the neighborhood associations about the lack of communication or the communication that had gone away due to budget cuts. And I believe it was $75,000, maybe $100,000 was put into a position to create some sort of study or plan for communicating with the neighborhood associations. Am I not recalling that correctly? Because I feel the same thing has come back this year on the communication piece, and I kind of want to know where that is on some of these smaller pieces that we've done, and at least from a community standpoint, what has become of all that?
Staff can probably speak to that. My memory is we did do a communication study, but I think that was broader than just the neighborhoods. I think it was
That's correct.
more
That was,
citywide.
all communications, both external and internal, as well as civic engagement. It wasn't specifically focused on the neighborhood associations, and that was a one-time funding for a study, not for an actual position.
Thank you. Then what was the outcome of the study?
So the study has been completed, and we're expecting the formal report any day now.
All right, Member Bennett?
The only concern I've got with a few of these small ones is that they are set for actual action on May 11th, and I'm a little concerned as I look around the room that if we're going to talk about a couple of these that I've heard about, if you're going to talk about sidewalks, invasive plant species, bocce, new park in Nin, there are people who are going to want to be here and testify, and to try to run this out tonight would be a real mistake. Just a real mistake. I can see allowing us to ask additional questions, to suggest, alternative routes, but to try to vote on this stuff without public notice would be a real mistake. It'd be really unacceptable to me for those areas that I've put on, because I have been real clear based on the schedule I've been provided. May 11th is when this will be dealt with.
I appreciate that.
Okay?
Member Bednarz.
So one thing we haven't talked about, and I think this may be the place to do it, where we're not taking things necessarily off, but let's talk about if we don't take them off, how are we going to fund them? We've got to cut something else within the budget. And I look at our city managers where I'm looking, because I don't know of any better location. He's already laid the line down for the different departments that we've spent the last, 4 or 5 weeks with, talking about. If we're going to add $300,000 worth of expenses, or in this case, let's say a little over $2 million, $2.1 million, where's that money going to come from out of the budget? And where do you start that discussion? I mean, at this point, I'd like to have a fire station up in Northeast Salem open, but it's 1.7 that I'm going to have to cut someplace else.
No, you don't.
Member Peterson?
You take it out of the reserve?
Sorry, just a second. Member Peterson, did you want to
Thank you.
comment
Yeah,
on that?
I would like to say a few words, and that is that we still have several items that we're waiting for additional information, items 8 through 13, and I would like to be certain that we have those reports, and in fact, as we discussed with the fire chief, the fact that we would need to hear a plan from him, or at least some sketch as to how he could reduce the response times in that map where there's red, not just in Northeast, not just by the fire station that we closed, but in other wards and across the community. So I would not favor any discussion about how we're going to fund it until we hear what the plan would be and how much it would actually be needed. I think tonight is a great opportunity. In my mind, I thought what we were going to do as far as the wish list tonight was, if any of us had placed something on the wish list and led the motion for that, and if we'd done other research or we've had more conversations out in the community, and we felt like coming back and saying, I've thought that over, and I don't think I do want to have, jumping jacks in the park, then I could make a motion to withdraw what I originally had put on. But I didn't think that we were going to start going through and prioritizing tonight as to the other things that are on the wish list. And it is 11 minutes after 9, and it would be frankly nice to have one budget night when we're not here until 10:30 and all of that. So,
Member Bennett.
Yeah, I'll just follow the mayor's lead on this because I think she's really describing what I thought we were doing tonight. So what I did was follow up on bocce courts. I just figured, well, I'll take that one. And I followed up on invasive plant and met with both groups. The invasive plant folks have put together a proposal that they have brought to the Parks Department that is a pilot program that is quite specific to eradication of invasive species in Hillfiker Park. They've got a real specific proposal that they have, I think, vetted with folks over at the Parks Department on invasive plant species. And I think it's interesting what they're saying because it has long-term implications for opening various park areas that are in pretty clean condition. And that's what they're kind of starting to talk about. And what do the costs look like? And I think they're going to look like less than $20,000. And those are just, I saw those as placeholder numbers. Same thing has occurred with the bocce courts. They have met with Parks Department folks. They've looked at several locations. They've got ideas that go into maybe more into different detail than using oyster shell as their base, that there are other products that can be used that really begin to substantially decrease the cost of these courts, and they have figured out some locations that optimize the use, and there are numbers available now on how many people we can expect to be using these courts. And we're talking well north of 100 people for using these things on a very regular basis with fairly substantial play in tournaments. So those are the kinds of factors I'd like to have brought forward. I think lower cost, higher, and a real strong definition of what usage looks like. So at least as we vote on this stuff, we have some understanding of what we're talking about. So what I'd be looking forward to is amending these to bring them into line. And as far as where you pay for them, I think there is money there to pay for it. That's how I read it, okay? Now, others will read those numbers differently. And I think if you look at the fire department section, that's a discussion. I mean, it may have been defined as open a fire station. I think it really had a lot more to do, as the mayor described, with how do we deal with these burgeoning numbers in certain parts of the community. Is it an engine company, or what is it? What's it look like, and where's it stationed? I would hope it doesn't mean personally, I think stationing them out at Chemeketa Community College is kind of a fool's errand. You know, and I don't think we're going to build a new fire station, so I think we have another discussion that needs to go on there. So I think we could, you know, talk about these in different ways. The new park in Nin and Lansing, I thought the staff report was real good, and I didn't see a lot of money associated with it. Do you see what I mean? I think we can work our way through these and probably come up with a number that is still substantially higher than we've ever seen before. 27 million in reserves? No. 24, that's still substantially higher than we've seen before. And then these contingency funds. We're seeing a lot of money. We're getting up to 20% in reserves and contingencies. That's, to me, when you're service poor and reserves rich, you ought to stop and at least have a discussion of that phenomenon. Is that what you want? That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying right or wrong, just that's the way I'd look at it.
I just came up with my comment because I wanted to be prepared. If we're not talking about cutting, I want to be prepared with the next meeting that we have an idea, an inclination as to where we're going to get the funds if we want to keep these other projects on.
What's your toleration of reserves? How much do you have to have before you can sleep nights? And how much do they have to keep a AA bond rating? And how much do we have to not go over the cliff? That's 5 years out.
No, the one we're right in parallel to.
Yeah, the one we seem to travel.
All right, Member Bailey?
Yeah, I guess I'm seeing these figures that some of us, including myself, threw out as being an indication to staff and to the departments involved of an interest that we have as a budget committee in pursuing the particular item. The dollar figure may or may not be accurate, and it may or may not be something that's doable, but I would like, I mean, I appreciate some options here, but I would really like, for instance, Parks to wrestle with this and say, all right, here's how we can make this work, rather than just say, well, it's either this or that. And I'm not qualified to make the judgment about exactly where it comes from. But to me, that's why these are policy indications as much as they are budget items. And to both the mayor's and Member Bennett's point, same with the fire. I wasn't necessarily agreeing to open a fire station, but I think that amount is indicative of what the scale of the problem we're looking at citywide. And so I do think we need more information coming back, because I'm certainly not qualified to sit here and say exactly how to allocate that. And I realize it's a little bit of an all-hands-on-deck sort of thing before next week, but that's where we are.
Member Nanki?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just ask for maybe next week, if we're talking about ending fund balances, to bring back history of maybe 5 years and going forward 5 years. We've been purposely setting money in it because we have some deficiencies coming up over the next couple of years as well. So that's not going to hang up at that 24. Matter of fact, it goes under the 10 within 5. It'd be nice to know what those expenditures coming up that are going to drag it underneath would be.
And what the revenue projections look like in an expanding economy.
It's kind of like just a brief, the 5-year budget
We'll provide
outlook, so we can.
We'll have that in your packet.
City Manager, did you have?
No.
Okay. Other comments, discussion? Member Lewis?
Okay, it's after 9, so I'm going to ask them a lost question. On the projects and the amounts, it has a one-time infrequent amount and then next to it ongoing. For example, on the full-time police officer, it's $5,000 one time and ongoing $135,560. I just want to make sure I'm understanding it, that there's some cost to getting the person, and then the $135,560 is the cost for the fiscal year 16-17 to have that person. Okay. So for example, under Culture and Tourism Fund, we've added under the one-time $176,380. What I take that to mean is we budgeted in the 25% amount for just this year. If we wanted to have that be ongoing, what would be under the ongoing list? Would it be unknown?
I think that it would be possibly unknown, and the reason that things were segregated in this manner on this page was this budget committee can influence one budget. And so the increase that you're advocating for, that you could advocate for Travel Salem, would be simply for the 16-17 budget. It's a policy decision, and that would be of the council if you wanted that to be ongoing.
But these costs, both columns add up to what the wish list is.
That is correct.
That's right.
I told you it was an I lost question.
Member Hazlitt?
The only question I had is on the .50 FTE Park Ranger. Did we not ask the staff to come back and ask or answer who that park ranger would fall under, whether it be under the police chief, the Parks Public Department, whoever? We never did hear back.
It would be Public Works Parks.
That's who it would fall under?
Yes.
And why would it be under them? What was the thought
I
process?
don't know if Peter or Chief Moore want to provide some detail on that.
Our feeling is that the Parks Ranger would work closely with Parks Operations staff in identifying issue. They're not a law enforcement service. They're more of a code enforcement. So we already have a code enforcement officer in Public Works, so it would be an augmentation of that kind of work, specifically related to parks issues.
Thank you. Member Hazlitt, did you have any other question? No. All right. All right, I don't see any further discussion, so I got to get back to my agenda. think we're just about done. Public testimony on future budget issues? Don't see any. Any other business the committee would like to bring up? Seeing none, we are adjourned.